Mother, I want a wife. Make that Li Xiaozong marry over here and give me a wife in exchange. That stubborn girl refuses the marriage swap. She's locked herself inside and won't come out. What am I supposed to do? The Li family's stepmother pointed at the tightly shut rickety wooden door behind her. She actually thinks I mean her harm. Being a stepmother is truly no easy task. Mother, move aside. I'll smash the door open. I don't believe she can stay hidden. With that, Wu Chunqing charged forward. The dilapidated wooden door could not withstand the impact. It crashed to the ground, sending up a cloud of dust. The stepmother quickly covered her nose and mouth with her hands. At that very moment, the rope on the roof beam snapped. Li Xiaozong crashed heavily onto the earthen floor. The stepmother bared her teeth and pointed at the girl on the ground. This reckless girl tried to take her own life. Does she think hanging herself will get her out of the marriage? Dream on. Even if she died, the stepmother intended to arrange a posthumous ghost marriage for her. Word had it ghost marriages brought higher betrothal gifts than ordinary weddings. She would take the money from Li Xiaozong's ghost marriage to get a wife for her own son. Hanging herself? Wu Chunqing's narrow eyes fixed on the collapsed girl. Li Xiaozong would rather die than accept the swap marriage. That made her thoroughly detestable. He lifted his sandaled foot and kicked her hard. Li Xiaozong's gaunt, scrawny body skidded a foot across the ground, her eyes still closed. Stop faking death. Wu Chunqing raised his foot for a second kick. The stepmother folded her arms and watched with a twisted smirk. She felt nothing but satisfaction. The foolish girl was always threatening to end her own life, trying to frighten everyone. She was not her birth child anyway. It would almost be a relief if she died. Songer, look what Big Brother brought you. Li Danio's voice drifted into the yard. Wu Chunqing froze, his foot suspended in mid-air. Just as his name suggested, Li Dania possessed the brute strength of an ox. Wu Chunqing was much shorter than him. They had fought once before, and Wu Chunqing had lost badly. Though Li Dania's father had beaten Dania severely afterward to avenge Wu Chunqing, Li's father was away working in the fields right now. If they fought again, Wu Chunqing would be the one to suffer. The stepmother realized the same danger. She shot her son a sharp look. When she turned toward the gate, Li Dania stepped into the yard, showing his big white teeth in a grin. His smile faded the instant he spotted Wu Chunqing and the stepmother. The stepmother snorted. Can you greet me properly? Where did you pick up such bad manners? Faced with his stepmother, the tall, strapping Li Dania hunched his shoulders and shrank inward. His lips parted and he mumbled, "And I'm home." The stepmother's gaze drifted toward Li Xiaozong lying behind her. She wondered if the girl was already dead. Why are you back so early? Your father is all alone in the fields. How can he manage all that work by himself? Li Dania kept his hands behind his back and stared at the ground. Xiaozong has barely eaten these past 2 days. I was worried about her, so I came back to check. The stepmother panicked. If Li Dania found Xiaozong alive and saved her, her whole plan to get a wife for her son would fall apart. While Dania kept his head bowed, she tugged Wu Chunqing outside. Both of them blocked the doorway with their bodies. Drought has plagued us these past 2 years. Crops barely grow. They need constant tending, otherwise how will our whole family survive? Eager to send him away, she urged, "You've seen her now. Hurry back and help your father." Li Dania could not stop worrying about his little sister. Before his birth, mother passed away. She had held his hand and made him swear to look after Xiaozong and keep her from harm. These last 2 days his sister would not eat or speak. His heart was heavy with anxiety. "I just want one quick look at Xiaozong, then I'll go." The stepmother's eyes narrowed. "I took Xiaozong in when she was only 5. I've raised her all these years. Do you truly doubt how I treat her?" Ashamed, Li Dania hung his head. He remembered how Xiaozong used to follow the stepmother around calling her mother. The stepmother had always treated her like her own daughter, constantly praising Xiaozong as clever, pretty and well-behaved in front of him and their father. He felt guilty for suspecting his step-aunt. "And I'll head back to the fields. Here are 2 bird eggs. Please boil them for Xiaozong and show her to eat." The stepmother took the 2 small bird eggs. "Very well." Li Dania still longed to glance at his sister, but the doorway was completely blocked. He scratched the back of his head and trundled back toward the farmland. Once Li Dania was gone, Wu Chunqing stared greedily at the bird eggs in his mother's hand. "Only 2. Not nearly enough to fill my stomach. Mother, boil these for me. I'm starving. The step. Mother smiled at her son. One for you and one for Shoer. I'll cook them right away. Wu Chunqing trailed behind her, grumbling. Shoer was only half related to him. He saw no reason to share the eggs. Inside the room, Li Xiaozong slowly opened her eyes. She stared at the adobe walls and thatched roof. Her ribs throbbed, and her leg burned with sharp pain. She propped herself against the floor, trying to sit up, but her right leg would not obey. Had she become lame? A surge of fright passed through her. Her right leg was swollen to twice the size of her left one. She must have broken it in the fall from the beam. She could not stand. She thought of her elder brother and how the household was ruled by the cruel step-mother. Her father was a quiet, taciturn man. Convinced his daughter was being well cared for, he never asked how she fared. She lifted her bony, emaciated arm, then let it fall helplessly. Only her elder brother cared for her. Yet he was simple-minded and intimidated by their step-mother. Faintly, while she had blacked out, she thought she had heard her brother's voice. She called toward the door, "Brother. Li Daniu. Come quick. My leg hurts." In the kitchen, the step-mother's hands froze mid-stoke on the firewood. "Chunqing, did you hear something? Is someone talking?" She prayed she had imagined it. That wretched girl must not pull through. Wu Chunqing squatted beside the pot, watching the 2 bird eggs simmer. "Mother, there's nobody talking. Stoke the fire. I'm starving." Relieved, the step-mother told herself anxiety had played tricks on her ears. Water bubbled vigorously in the pot. Small bird eggs cooked quickly. Wu Chunqing reached in to grab one, burned his fingers, and yelped, clutching his ear. The step-mother chided with an amused tone. "What's your hurry? Those eggs aren't going anywhere." Right then, rapid footsteps echoed across the yard. Li Dania had turned back. A terrible premonition gnawed at his heart. Something felt terribly wrong at home. When he stepped into the courtyard, no one blocked the door anymore. He saw the broken door on the ground and his little sister lying motionless on the earthen floor. Li Dania's heart constricted. If anything happened to her, he would never be able to keep the promise he had made to his late mother. "Songer! Songer!" Li Xiaozong exhaled weakly. Her good-hearted brother had finally returned. Before she could speak, strong arms lifted her clean off the ground. She smelled heavy sweat. Li Dania's arms burned hot from working under the blazing sun. "Brother, you've finally come. If you'd arrived any later, we would never have seen each other again." Li Dania set her gently onto the bed. His eyes glistened on the verge of tears. "Songer, what happened to you? Tell me." Memories flooded Li Xiaozong's mind. The step-mother planned to send her to the Zhao family in the neighboring village for a swap marriage. 3 years of drought had devastated harvests in Li village. No one knew if this year's crops would survive. Every household scraped by on very little. Yet Wu Chunqing insisted he must get married right away. The family had no money for a bride price. Soft-hearted toward her own son, the step-mother had set her sights on Xiaozong. Swap marriages happened between destitute families. Daughters were exchanged between households. No betrothal gifts changed hands, no dowries were prepared. Girls were treated merely as bargaining chips to cut wedding costs. Her father and brother had known nothing of this arrangement. Or perhaps, she wondered, her father had known all along. Her father worked from dawn till dark in the fields. She could not even remember the last time they had spoken to each other. Li Xiaozong sighed heavily. Her skeletal arm rose and pointed toward the roof beam, where the frayed broken rope still dangled. Li Dania followed her gaze, his heart lurching. "Songer, where did that rope come from? Why did you hang it?" Li Xiaozong stared into his earnest eyes. "Brother, your sister was driven to hang herself. And you still ask why? Have you truly paid any attention to me?" Li Dania looked thoroughly confused. He could not fathom what would push his sister to such despair. Normally she was quiet and withdrawn. She barely answered 1 out of every 10 questions he asked her. "Songer, if you have troubles you cannot tell me, you should speak to Aunt. She treats you as her own flesh and blood. Why would you want to end your life?" Hidden outside the door, the step-mother listened and nodded to herself. At least they recognized all she had done for the girl. Still, she found it strange. Tongue-tied Li Xiaozong had suddenly found so many words. She could not let Xiaozong keep talking, or who knew what secrets she might spill. "Dania, why have you come back again?" She walked into the room. Li Dania felt awkward. He had left their father alone in the fields. No excuse could justify abandoning work. He stared at his feet. "Aunt, I just came to check on her." "What? Do you still distrust me?" The step. Mother shot Li Xiaozong a sharp, warning glare. Li Xiaozong looked straight back at her, feigning bewilderment. "Why do you always send my brother out to plow the fields? Even an ox deserves rest. He is a human being." She nodded toward Wu Chunxing, craning his neck to watch from the doorway. "Why don't you send him instead?" The step. Mother barely recognized the girl before her. This once silent child had completely changed. "Your second brother is unwell. He cannot work in the fields. As for you, why will you not call me mother anymore? All my care for you has been wasted." Li Xiaozong ignored her accusation. "Unwell? He looks perfectly healthy and full of energy. If anyone is worn out, it is my brother." Li Dania was large, framed yet emaciated, skin burnt dark by the sun, only the whites of his eyes standing out. He stared at his sister in utter shock. Li Xiaozong understood his astonishment. Her personality was nothing like the original Xiaozong's. But she could not keep enduring mistreatment just to avoid arousing suspicion. "You wicked girl." The step. Mother's chest heaved with rage. "I am your mother, and he is your brother. How dare you speak to me like this? I see it now. You are grown and no longer need me. Nothing I do pleases you. After all, you are not my birth child. There will always be a rift between us." She wiped fake tears from her eyes with her sleeve. Li Dania bowed his head. Once upon a time Xiaozong had been fonder of their step, and than of him. This rude outburst must be from hitting her head in the fall. That had to be it. And Xiaozong does not mean it. She hit her head when she fell. She is not thinking clearly. He turned to his sister. "Say less. Aunt knows what is best. You will understand when you are older." The step. Mother sighed mournfully, her eyelids drooping. "I bear no grudge. Being a step, mother is thankless. If I discipline you, people say I am cruel. If I do not, they say I neglect you. I cannot win either way." Li Dania nodded sympathetically. "And I know how hard things are. I will go back to the fields now." Li Xiaozong listened, bewildered. Her brother had always loved her. Why was he siding with the step, mother? Then she realized he was afraid of her. But what was he so afraid of? Disappointment washed over Xiaozong. After adjusting to being transported into this time, she had taken comfort in having a loving elder brother. Better than the lonely life she had lived before. Now she saw she had been wrong. Her heart ached. There was no reason for her to stay in this household. Rather than suffocate here, she ought to run away. She had no plan for where she would go, but surely she would not starve. She tried to shift her weight to stand, but her broken leg throbbed unbearably. Seeing her struggle, Li Dania knelt down, full of worry. "Somer, where are you going? Tell me, and I will do it for you." Li Xiaozong was confused. Why such genuine concern after defending the step, mother? "Do not concern yourself with where I go. I am leaving this house. I will not stay to be a nuisance to all of you." She tried once more to rise. Agony flooded her body, cold sweat breaking out across her skin. It felt like splintered bone was piercing her flesh. Hearing her words, the strong, built Li Dania's eyes filled with tears. Li Xiaozong felt as though she had committed some terrible crime. She panicked. "Why are you crying? If I leave, everyone will have an easier time." A tear rolled down Li Dania's dark cheek. Xiaozong's heart twisted. Her bony hand reached out to wipe it away. "Brother, do not cry. Who has hurt you?" Li Dania brushed the tear away with the back of his hand, his voice hoarse. "Songer, do not say such things that pierce my heart. It hurts right here." He pressed a hand over his chest. Li Xiaozong's own eyes stung. "Then why do you stand by that cruel step, mother, instead of me? I am your real sister." Li Dania stared, stunned. He remembered how close Xiaozong had seemed to their step, aunt. He had only tried to calm the situation so that Xiaozong would not be forced to apologize later for angry words. He had wanted to spare her trouble. The step. Mother heard every word. Furious, she pointed directly at Li Xiaozong. "You ungrateful wretch. Who are you calling a cruel step, mother?" Li Xiaozong pointed straight back. You are exactly that. You treat me well in front of father and brother, but the moment they leave you starve me and take away my food." Li Dania's eyes widened in horror. His eyes turned red as he spun toward the step, mother. He had always obeyed her, hoping his little sister could have the warmth of a mother figure. He could not believe she behaved so differently behind closed doors. "Songer, is this true?" Li Xiaozong felt a spark of hope. At last her brother would stand up for her. She was glad for him. The step. Mother stepped backward, yet stubbornly refused to admit anything. I did that for her own good. No family will want a plump, body girl for a wife. I was keeping her from becoming unmarriageable. My kindness gets thrown back in my face. Li Dania's anger faded. He thought he understood now. Aunt, we misunderstood you. Li Xiaozong's hope crumbled. She had been ready to pour out years of pent-up grievances. She pushed up her sleeve, revealing her emaciated, almost skeletal arm. Too fat and no household will marry me? Does this skeleton, thin body please prospective families instead? She pointed at dark bruises scattered across her skin. These marks from you pinching and hitting me and warning me never to tell my brother, is that also for my own good? Li Dania ground his teeth. His fists clenched until his knuckles cracked. Aunt, explain this. The step-mother's gaze flickered away, yet she held her ground. How should I know what caused those marks? Do you expect me to watch her every single second? Xiaozong had not expected a confession. Very well. I will tell you. She indicated one bruise on her forearm. You pinched me the day before yesterday. This one you twisted yesterday. And this one high on my upper arm, you struck me this morning. When I refused the swap, marriage to the Zhao family, you flew into a rage and pinched me hard. There are many more bruises on my thighs. Do you want me to lift my trousers and show everyone? Li Dania quickly grabbed her wrist to stop her. He understood now why his sister had fallen silent all those years. She had been terrified of being beaten. He whirled toward the doorway. Wu Chunxing had been enjoying the spectacle. When he met Li Dania's blazing rage, he turned to run. Before he could get away, Dania grabbed him by the back of his collar, lifted him off his feet, and hurled him. Wu Chunxing crashed heavily onto the courtyard ground. Ow! Why are you hitting me? I did not do it. Wu Chunxing groaned, every part of his body aching. Inside the room, the stepmother let out a shrill wail. Li Dania, have you lost your mind? How dare you lay hands on my son? Have you no respect for me? Li Dania could not strike the stepmother herself, but he would avenge his sister. As she rushed toward him, he kicked Wu Chunxing again and again. From the room, Li Xiaozong clapped her hands. She had never realized how formidable her brother could be. Brother, hit him. When I fell down, he kicked me too. Enraged, Li Dania drew back his leg to drive a heavy blow into Wu Chunxing's stomach. Terrified the kick would shatter her son's bones, the stepmother threw both hands against Li Dania. Though he did not fall, his aim shifted. His boot smashed hard into Wu Chunxing's thigh. The stepmother of the Li family threw herself over her son, wailing, "Oh heavens! Open your eyes. This little beast has struck his own mother. Send down a thunderbolt and strike him dead." Wu Chunxing was shielded by his mother. Li Dania dared not lay a hand on an elder. He clenched his fists, staring furiously at the mother and son pair. Inside the room, Li Xiaozong sat on the bed, clapping her hands in delight. Big brother, you're amazing. Well done. From now on, you are my real elder brother. If I have a bite to eat, you will never go hungry. Thinking of his injured little sister, Li Dania held back his rage, huffed, and strode back into their room. When he laid eyes on his younger sister, her thin neck and gaunt face, his eyes stung with tears again. His stepmother had said the girl had no appetite and refused food. Back then, he had thought his sister simply had no taste for good food. It turned out their stepmother had been withholding meals from her. What kind of miserable life had his little sister endured while he was away from home? By the way, I brought back 2 bird eggs for you today. Did you get to eat them? Bird eggs? Li Xiaozong shook her head. What bird eggs? No kind of egg ever makes its way to me. I'm sure those 2 black-hearted people out there have gobbled them up. Guilt weighed heavier on Li Dania's heart. He had often climbed bird nests to bring back treats for his sister to nourish her body. He had hoped those rare delicacies would spark her appetite. There was no need to ask. He could tell his sister had never tasted a single one of those eggs. Li Dania squatted beside the bed, buried his face in his knees, and hung his head. Li Xiaozong fell silent, then poked his arm with one finger. Brother, don't grieve. It isn't all your fault. If I had been braver and told you everything sooner, I wouldn't have suffered so much. Li Dania lifted his head, eyes brimming with tears. You have endured so much pain, yet you are the one comforting me. Xiaozong, I have failed you. I have failed our birth mother. Li Xiaozong sighed and patted her elder brother on the shoulder. To pull him out of his remorse, she changed the subject. Brother, I'm hungry. Right on cue, her stomach rumbled loudly. Li Dania shot to his feet. I'll find you something to eat. He wiped his tears and stepped out into the courtyard. His stepmother had already helped Wu Chunxing back into their room. Sobbing curses drifted out from inside. Those two wolf pups. Not flesh of my flesh, not bone of my bone. Heartless brats. Just wait till your father comes home. They'll get what they deserve. Panic stirred in Lee Danio's chest. His father was a quiet, withdrawn man. Unlike his sister, who kept to herself but never harmed anyone, his father could lash out without warning. He still remembered the last beating. His stepmother had lied and said he had bullied Wu Chunqing. His father had said nothing at the time, and Lee Danio had thought the matter was over. But as he crouched washing his face, a heavy wooden blow landed squarely across his back. The pain had been searing. He had collapsed on the ground, certain he was going to die. Yet he had clung to life if he died. Who would look after his little sister? That time, Wu Chunqing had stolen the sparrow Lee Danio had roasted for Xiao Tsong. Lee Danio had only taken it back, and his stepmother had twisted the story to make him out to be the aggressor. Later, his father had learned the truth, yet he had chosen to pretend nothing had happened. Old grievances welled up inside Lee Danio. He gave a bitter, helpless shake of his head. Fathers beat their children. Was he being foolish to feel wronged? He went to the kitchen. The place was bare, with only broken eggshells scattered near the stove pit. He returned to the room with drooping shoulders, empty-handed. Li Xiaozong let out a disappointed breath. Brother, anything will do. Just something to fill my stomach. She had gone without food for so long. She feared she would not make it through the night. Li Dania burned with shame. The kitchen has nothing. All the grain is locked in our stepmother's room. Seeing how troubled her brother was on her account, Li Xiaozong could not bear to add to his distress. Brother, I'm not hungry anymore. She forced a smile. Her gaunt face and matted yellow hair made her bared teeth look ghastly, and Li Danio's heart ached all the more. Li Xiaozong shifted over on the bed to make space for him to sit. Li Dania shook his head. Father is still working in the fields. I'll go help him. There will be food when we get back. Just hold on a little longer. Li Xiaozong nodded. Go on then. Li Dania walked toward the door and glanced at the broken wooden door panel. I'll fix this door before I leave. No, don't bother, brother. Hurry to the fields. She wanted the broken door to remain as evidence, to see what her father would do. Once Li Dania left, hunger made Li Xiaozong's head spin. She lay down and drifted off to sleep. The sun sank, and darkness fell. Footsteps echoed in the courtyard. Li Xiaozong rubbed her eyes and sat up. The room was pitch black, matching the heavy despair in her heart. This was no dream. She had woken up and was still trapped here. Xiaozong. Li Dania strode inside. Relief washed over him when he saw his sister sitting upright. Li Xiaozong glanced toward the doorway. Where is your father? Li Dania paused, then corrected her. Our father. He's outside. Li Xiaozong raised her voice on purpose. Does your father know I was injured? Li Dania nodded. Yes. I told him just now. He had known and had not come to check on her. Li Xiaozong now understood her place in this household. Deep in her memories she had always known, yet she had needed to confirm it for herself. Can we eat now? Only then did Li Dania notice how strange the house felt. He hurried outside. Father, where is our stepmother? Why isn't there any food? Li Shoshan leaned against the wall, holding his opium pipe. Li Dania glanced toward the main room. It was dark. No meal had been prepared. Father? Where is she? Li Shoshan took a puff of his pipe and said nothing. Why are you shouting? You want food? Cook it yourselves. I owe none of you anything. Do you expect me to wait on you hand and foot? Their stepmother's voice snapped from the east room. Li Dania had thought she was out. She had merely been hiding indoors. Father, what does she mean? He asked, confused. Li Shoshan acted as if he had not heard. The bowl of his pipe glowed and dimmed as he exhaled clouds of smoke. Li Dania might not understand, but Li Xiaozong did. Their stepmother was refusing to cook for them. Worse still, she held all the grain locked in her room. She intended to starve them. Brother, ask our father what we are supposed to eat tonight. Li Dania grew annoyed. During the day he had let her bitter words pass, thinking she was only venting her bad mood. But she kept saying your father instead of our father. Xiaozong, do not speak of him like that. He is your father too. That brought Li Xiaozong's retort. Is he really? When our stepmother planned to trade me for a bride for her son, he agreed. Has he ever treated me like his own daughter? Li Dania fell silent and looked toward their father, waiting for him to speak. Li Shoshan's pipe glowed once more. He blew out another cloud of smoke and remained silent. Li Dania was used to his father's reticence, yet anxiety gnawed at him. Father, did you know about the plan to trade Xiaozong in a marriage exchange? Li Shoshan kept puffing on his pipe and said nothing. Li Dania stamped his foot in frustration. Father, say something. Stop your racket. Li Shoshan finally spoke. Are you the father here, or am I? Li Dania flinched, bowed his head, and fell quiet. He walked back to Li Xiaozong's doorway and fitted the broken door panel back into place. Li Xiaozong felt bitter amusement. They had worked all day and returned home with no hot food. Why did he never raise his voice at his wife? Her brother had only asked a question, and all the father's anger landed on him. Brother, carry me outside. Thinking she needed to relieve herself, Li Dania wiped his hands on his tunic and crouched down. Li Xiaozong climbed onto his back. His frame was sturdy, but painfully thin. He carried her toward the outhouse. Li Xiaozong tapped his shoulder. Put me down here. He stopped. Aren't you going to the latrine? Still, he set her gently on her feet. Li Xiaozong stood on one leg, unable to bear weight on her injured foot. The courtyard lay in deep shadow, the moon had not yet risen. She could barely make out her father's silhouette against the wall. Did you know they intended to send me to Hao Village for a marriage exchange? Li Shoshan visibly jolted. He had not expected his daughter to confront him directly. He said nothing. Anger welled up inside Li Xiaozong. Your silence means you knew. You were willing to send me off to secure a wife for our stepmother's son. Li Shoshan acted as if he had heard nothing. Without her memories of the past, Li Xiaozong would have suspected he was mute. She feared that once Li Dania was away from home, her father and stepmother would tie her up and deliver her to the Zhao family. People said when a stepmother came into the house, a stepfather soon followed. Li Shoshan had already beaten his own biological son for Wu Chuanqing's sake. There was no telling what else he might do. You're the head of this household. You owe me an answer. Silence solves nothing. Li Shoshan tilted his head, his lips moved, and then he turned away again. Li Xiaozong hated this performance. She was the one being wronged, yet her father carried himself like an injured party. Your silence only emboldens her. Have you no concern for how your daughter has been living under this roof? Li Shoshan glanced at her briefly and turned his gaze away once more. He might hold his tongue behind closed doors, but their stepmother could not bear to listen any longer. She threw open her door with a bang and planted her hands on her hips. What kind of life have you had here? You live in comfort, waited on hand and foot. Ask your own conscience who cooks and provides for all three of you men. Li Shoshan said nothing, but nodded his head. Li Xiaozong's fury flared. She pulled open her garment to show her gaunt, bony torso. This is the good life I led. I go hungry day after day. I have had to sneak up the mountain to eat wild plants just to survive. Even then, they plot to trade me away, squeezing every last bit of use out of me. What kind of father are you? Li Shoshan's eyes flew wide. His voice came out hoarse. Cover yourself. Pull your clothes back on. So he was not mute after all. Li Xiaozong had finally heard him speak. Father, did you know about the plan to trade me in marriage? Li Shoshan glanced toward his wife. After a long pause, he mumbled, when did this happen? Their stepmother's eyes darted about. She did not know how to reply. If she denied the scheme, her plan to get a wife for her son would collapse. If she admitted it, she would be exposed for plotting behind the head of household's back. While she hesitated, Li Xiaozong felt a flicker of relief. It seemed her father had truly known nothing. She told me 3 days ago. I told her I would not go. When I refused, she pinched me. My body is nothing but skin and bone. I bit back tears and dared not make a sound. Do you know why I stayed silent? Li Shoshan shook his head numbly. A dull ache settled in Li Xiaozong's chest. Because I was terrified. Behind closed doors, I have suffered constant mistreatment. Ever since our stepmother arrived, I have never known a day free of cruelty. When she was little, the 5-year-old girl had followed her stepmother around, calling her mother, truly wanting to love her. Yet the woman had treated her like an enemy. She had endured beatings and scoldings out of sight of others. Little by little, the child had grown quiet, hiding away to avoid harm. Li Dania sank to the ground, covering his face and sobbing. I failed you, little sister. I could not protect you. That is a lie. Their stepmother waved her hand. Where did those bruises really come from? You fell and scraped yourself somewhere, and now you make up lies to slander me. Li Xiaozong leaned against the wall to keep from falling, still standing only on her good leg. Father, will you believe her, or will you believe me? Li Dania wiped his tears and lifted his head, looking hopefully at their father, waiting for justice for his sister. Li Shoshan let out a heavy sigh and stared fixedly at the ground. Wife, is what Xiaozong says true? That question enraged the stepmother. She began to wail, beating her thighs. What a bitter fate is mine. I have lived in this house for 10 years. I have labored hard for this family. How can you believe a child's lies over your own wife? Li Shoshan grew flustered, waving his hands. I do believe you. I never doubted you. Li Xiaozong's heart sank. Intellectually, she had expected this outcome, yet a cold, heavy pain clamped around her chest, making it hard to breathe. The stepmother sniffled, pretending hurt. Thank goodness you trust me. Otherwise my heart would be broken. Li Shoshan could not bear to see his wife weep. He looked toward Li Daniu. You unruly boy. How have you raised your sister, letting her spread such falsehoods? I will beat you since. He thought that punishing his son would appease his wife. Li Dania saw his father raise a straw sandal and hunched over, covering his head. Their birth mother had once told him the head must be protected. A blow there could destroy a person. He had never forgotten that warning. Li Dania, run! Xiaozong cried out. But Li Dania did not move. He had grown accustomed to beatings. In his mind, a father had every right to discipline his son. Li Shoshan brought the sandal hard down across Li Dania's back, each strike delivered with full force. The stepmother watched with quiet triumph. Husband, do not beat him too harshly. He has spoken unkindly of me for a long time, and I bear no grudge. Hearing this, Li Shoshan thought his wife had endured years of grievance, and struck even harder. Li Xiaozong tried to rush forward, but her injured leg gave way, and she tumbled to the ground. Li Dania saw her fall and forgot his own pain. He scrambled over to her side. Xiaozong, are you hurt? Li Shoshan pursued, lifting the sandal to strike Li Daniu across the head. Li Xiaozong threw herself over her brother to shield him, taking the full force of the blow on her own back. Burning, throbbing pain spread across her shoulders. Li Shoshan froze, panic washing over him. On her deathbed, Xiaoxing's birth mother had clasped his hands and begged him never to strike their daughter or she would haunt him as a ghost. He glanced around half expecting ghosts, then staggered backward. Li Dania held his sister tightly, his voice raw with grief. Xiaozong, why were you so foolish? I could take the beating. My skin is thick, but you are not strong enough for this. He gripped her bony wrist, his heart pierced with sorrow. Her injured leg had borne sudden weight, and beads of cold sweat rolled down Xiaozong's face. She had hoped to reason with her father, or to cut ties with him if all else failed. Now all those plans were set aside. Brother, carry me back inside. Right away. Li Dania lifted her into his arms. Bear the pain, Xiaozong. Tomorrow I will fetch a doctor for you. Li Xiaozong slipped into a dazed sleep. Li Dania sat on the threshold and kept watch through the whole night. At dawn, Li Dania brushed dirt off his clothes and hurried out of the village. There was no doctor in Li village, but a folk healer lived in the next hamlet, called on for all local ailments. Voices roused Li Xiaozong. She opened her eyes to see a bearded old man standing beside her bed. Li Daniu asked anxiously, Dr. Wang, how is she? Dr. Wang felt her right leg over her trousers. The bone is likely cracked. It is not life-threatening. With rest, she will recover in time. Li Dania let out a long breath. Thank heaven. That is a relief. Li Xiaozong rejoiced to hear she would not be left lame. To be crippled in this harsh world where food was scarce would almost certainly mean starvation. Doctor, are you certain it is only a bone crack, not a full fracture? Dr. Wang glanced at her in surprise, a village girl who knew the difference between a crack and a break. I pressed the injury and you showed no extreme agony. The limb is swollen, but there is no obvious deformity. It should only be a crack. Li Xiaozong chose to trust his judgment. Thank you, doctor. Li Dania walked the healer out into the courtyard and asked him to wait. He went to find his father for the medical fee. From inside the house, Li Xiaozong heard their step, mother start shouting curses. She fell down and still wants to call a doctor. Do you think money grows on trees around here? Li Dania hung his head, his fists clenched. Songer's leg is all swollen. We can't not get a doctor to look at it. The doctor was called by you, so you pay him. I have no money. Li's step, mother waved her hand sharply. With no other choice, Li Dania turned to his father for help. Father, Dr. Wang is still waiting. Li Shoshan took a puff from his dry tobacco pipe and exhaled the smoke, saying not a word. Seeing this, Li's step, mother grew even more triumphant. As long as Li Shoshan sided with her, she had nothing to fear. Li Xiaozong sighed deeply. It seemed her elder brother would not be able to get the consultation fee. Dr. Wang, hearing his name called, the doctor at the door turned back. Is there anything else hurting you? Li Xiaozong shook her head. Dr. Wang, I want to talk to you about something. Could I owe the consultation fee and pay you back in a couple of days? Dr. Wang looked troubled. If they were from the same village, it would be manageable, but since they were not, collecting the payment would be very inconvenient. Li Xiaozong saw his reluctance. Dr. Wang, you can see for yourself that my step-mother runs this household. Even if you refuse today, getting the money will be difficult. Give me 3 days, she trailed off, unsure how she would ever come up with the money. Still, the debt had been incurred because of her, and she intended to pay it herself. Give me 5 days. 5 days from now, I will send my elder brother over with the money. From the main room came only the sound of Li Dania begging. Dr. Wang realized that, just as Li Xiaozong had said, there would be no money handed over today. Very well, 5 days it is. Just do not forget to send it over. Dr. Wang agreed, yet Li Xiaozong felt no joy. She was now in debt for 10 copper coins for the medical visit. She did not even have a single copper coin to her name. Her leg was injured, and she could think of no way to earn the 10 coins. Li Dania trundled back inside to find the doctor gone. Somer, where is the doctor? Li Xiaozong gestured toward the outside. He left. He agreed to let us pay the consultation fee in 5 days. At the mention of the fee, Li Dania was filled with guilt. It is my fault. I cannot even get money for the doctor. How can this be your fault? Li Xiaozong comforted him. We have our own hands and feet. We will settle our own debts and count on no one else. Li Dania knew exactly who she meant by no one else. He is our father. Li Xiaozong rolled her eyes. Brother, even now you still defend him. He treats strangers better than he treats us. Can you not see that? Li Dania was not foolish. He saw it clearly enough. Yet he believed one must never defy one's elders, for that would be unfilial. Still, you ought not speak of him like that. We would not exist without him. Li Xiaozong realized reasoning with her stubborn elder brother was useless. Her mind turned back to the urgent problem. How was she going to earn those 10 copper coins? Daniel. Li Shoshan's voice called from outside the door. Li Dania tensed. His father wanted him to go work in the fields. But he worried deeply about his younger sister. Leaning forward, Li Xiaozong grabbed the front of his tunic. Brother, do not go. Wu Chunqing feigned illness every day and did no work, leaving Li Shoshan and Li Dania to do all the labor. Neither Li Shoshan nor Li Dania had eaten the day before, nor had they eaten that morning. If this went on, their bodies would break down. Li Dania looked down at his sister's hands. Somer, I will come back at mid-day to see you. I will fetch bird eggs for you. Bear with it a little longer. We will have something to eat by noon. At the mention of bird eggs, Li Xiaozong's stomach rumbled loudly, and she swallowed hard. Brother, do not go. What if they tie me up and send me off to the Zhao family for a marriage exchange while you are gone? She said this only to stop her brother from wearing himself out with work. If she told him the truth plainly, he would never stay. This was her only chance to make him remain. Li Dania stared at his sister's gaunt, bony hands and followed them up her emaciated arms. His heart ached at the sight of her, so thin she barely weighed anything. His eyes reddened, and he nodded. Li Xiaozong was surprised. This was the very first time her brother had chosen to rest instead of working. Growing impatient after waiting for his son, Li Shoshan stepped inside. He said nothing, simply staring at the brother and sister. Li Dania felt guilty. Since his birth mother had passed away, he had never skipped work before. Li Xiaozong met her father's gaze. You look honest enough, yet you only bully the weak. Why do you not call Wu Chunqing to work? Is he not your step-son, more beloved than your own flesh and blood? Li Shoshan's lips moved, and he forced out a reply. Chunqing is unwell. Li Xiaozong laughed bitterly. You only care that Chunqing is sick. Can you not see that your own daughter is also hurt? Are your eyes only for that Wu woman and her son? Li Shoshan's small eyes widened. Do not call her that. She is your mother. The woman's real name was Su Chunhua. Her first husband had been surnamed Wu. Li Xiaozong deliberately used that name to anger her father. Do not force a new mother on me. My real mother lies in her grave. You, Li Shoshan gasped for breath, thoroughly enraged. Everything in the household had been tolerable before. How had everything fallen apart overnight? Overcome with grief, Li Shoshan sank down to squat against the wall. Li Xiaozong watched him, seeing how he pretended to be wronged. You are wondering why the peaceful household has suddenly fallen into chaos, are you not? Li Shoshan lifted his head in bewilderment. His daughter had always been quiet and reserved. Why had she suddenly become so talkative, as though she could read his thoughts? Li Xiaozong gave a cold snort. All that false family harmony only existed because someone kept swallowing their grievances. Once that person refuses to endure any longer, the whole household falls into chaos. And that someone has been me. Li Shoshan seemed not to understand. He lifted his heavy eyelids. Danio, come. Work awaits. He pushed himself upright against the earthen wall. Li Dania made to follow him, and Li Xiaozong's earlier words felt completely wasted. In the past, she and her brother had endured exploitation from their own father and step-mother. Today, things had to change. Brother, you cannot go. Songer. Li Dania was uneasy. To skip work when he was used to laboring every day filled him with guilt. But no. Li Xiaozong cut him off. Do you want me to be dragged away? Li Dania shook his head. If anything worse befell his sister, he would have no face to meet their mother in the afterlife. Unable to make his son obey, Li Shoshan glanced at his daughter's injured leg, then turned and walked out with hunched shoulders and hands behind his back. Watching her father's retreating figure, Li Xiaozong rubbed her empty stomach. Brother, I am hungry. Li Dania thought of a plan. I will go up the mountain to look for bird nests. With luck, I might find bird eggs. Li Xiaozong did not want bird eggs. She wanted to change the rules of this household. I do not want bird eggs. I want proper food. Li Dania scratched the back of his head, looking helpless. The grain is kept in the step-mother's room. She will never give us any. Li Xiaozong had never expected Su Chunhua to hand over food willingly. She remembered that before long, Su Chunhua would take her shoe, soles, and go next door to Aunt Wang's house to stitch shoes. Stitching shoes was only an excuse. The real purpose was to gossip and pass the time. Once she was gone, they could get hold of the grain. Before long, sounds came from the yard. The kitchen door creaked open. Su Chunhua busied herself inside. Through her open doorway, Li Xiaozong watched Su Chunhua carry 2 bowls into Wu Chuanqing's room. Li Dania sniffed the air. It smells so good. Li Xiaozong could catch no scent. What can you smell? Li Dania sniffed again. Black flour porridge, fried with chopped green onions. Li Xiaozong pitied her brother. He worked like an ox every day, yet even oxen got grass to eat. Her brother had gone 2 full days without food. Chunqing, stay home and rest while you are sick. Once you recover, go work with your Uncle Li. Do not be like those ungrateful brats who only know how to eat and never work. Su Chunhua had spoken loud enough for Li Xiaozong to hear every word from her doorway. Once Su Chunhua was gone, Li Xiaozong turned to her brother. Brother, go get the grain. She has left. Li Dania hesitated. If he took grain, Su Chunhua would surely notice it was missing and complain to their father. Their father would fly into a rage and beat him. Seeing his hesitation, Li Xiaozong lowered her injured right leg from the bed. Holding onto the bed frame, she struggled to stand and hopped forward. Songer, stop. I will go, I will go. Li Dania cried out in alarm. Only a few hops left Li Xiaozong drenched in sweat. Weak from hunger and hampered by her injured leg, she grew dizzy even standing still. She paused in the doorway and watched Li Dania walk toward the east room. When Li Dania reached the door, he found it locked. A faint, involuntary smile tugged at his lips. Songer, it is locked. Why are you smiling? Li Xiaozong sighed in exasperation. She knew exactly what he was thinking. Forced by her to take grain, he felt relieved by the lock. It was not that he refused, it was that he could not. Li Dania spoke honestly. It is not that I disobey you. You can see for yourself, the door is locked. Li Xiaozong refused to give up. If they gave in now, they would starve, and there was no telling whether Su Chunhua would feed them at all later. If it is locked, break it open. Li Dania stared in shock. Breaking the lock would surely bring a beating. Not wanting her brother to suffer for her sake, Li Xiaozong hopped over, pushed him aside, and hefted a stone. One blow shattered the rusted lock, which hung crookedly from the wood. She tore the broken lock free and pushed the door open. The air inside reeked of her father's dry tobacco pipe. Brother, the grain is in the cabinet by the bed. Bring it out. Now that the lock was broken, a beating was unavoidable. Li Dania let out a long breath and steeled himself. He opened the cabinet. Inside stood 2 half-filled sacks of grain and 3 eggs. He took out only the black flour. Brother, take an egg too. I want to eat it, Li Xiaozong urged. After a moment's hesitation, Li Dania took 1 egg and closed the cabinet again. Wu Chunqing heard the noise and ran out. Eyes wide, he pointed at the brother and sister. How dare you? You are stealing my mother's grain. Put it back at once. This was the first time Li Dania had ever taken anything without permission. Nervous, he stepped backward. Li Xiaozong stepped forward to stand in his place, straightening her back. Wu boy, this is the Li family's house. This grain was planted by my brother's own hands, swing, hoe, stroke, by stroke. How can it belong to your mother? Wu Chunqing had never expected the quiet girl to speak so sharply. My mother runs this household. She decides how much grain we eat and who gets it. Taking it without her permission is stealing. Weak with hunger, Li Xiaozong had no energy left for bickering. She only wanted food in their bellies. Brother, waste no words. Let us go cook. Li Dania nodded and supported his younger sister toward the kitchen. Somer, I do not know how to cook. I will give the instructions and you do the work. We will manage together, Li Xiaozong said. Li Daniu made a pot of burnt black flour porridge with fragments of egg floating on top. Wu Chunqing slipped quietly out along the wall and soon returned with Su Chunhua. As soon as she stepped inside, Su Chunhua shrieked. You wicked, heartless children. Are you two starving ghosts reborn, stealing from your own household? Li Dania had just taken a mouthful of porridge. It stuck in his throat. He thumped his chest repeatedly until he could swallow it down. Somer, what do we do? Li Xiaozong tilted her chin upward. Eat. Fill our stomachs first. They needed strength to stand against Su Chunhua. Knowing a beating was inevitable, Li Dania resigned himself to his fate and ate his porridge in silence. This was Li Xiaozong's first meal since arriving in this body. The coarse black flour tasted of earth, with no appeal to sight, smell, or taste. Su Chunhua folded her arms and waited for them to argue back. When they did not, she hurried into the inner room and opened the cabinet. One of her 3 precious eggs was gone. Her heart ached. Eggs were among the most valuable possessions of peasant families. She had saved those 3 for her own daughter visiting from her natal family, only to have them squandered by these 2 brats. Chunqing, run to the fields and fetch your Uncle Li. I will not stand for this. Delighted by the prospect of trouble, Wu Chunqing sprinted off at once. Hearing this, Li Dania's heart sank. Even his porridge lost its flavor. Songer, do not be afraid. When father strikes, say it was all my doing. Let him beat me instead. Li Xiaozong felt warmth at her brother's devotion. Brother, this is the Li family's home. We are Li's children. Why should eating our own grain count as theft? Li Dania stared down at his bowl, lost in thought. Songer, father has remarried. This home belongs to father and the step-mother now. Li Xiaozong nodded. That much was true. Su Chunhua was part of this reformed household, yet starving and mistreating children was unforgivable. Li Shoshan appeared in the kitchen doorway, his face dark with rage. Li Daniu's coarse pottery bowl slipped from his hands. Fortunately, it landed on packed earth and did not shatter. Wiping his mouth, he scrambled to his feet. Father, you're back? Li Shoshan ignored his son's greeting and pointed into the kitchen. Who stole the grain? Li Dania stepped forward, shielding his younger sister. Father, it was me. Blame only me. Without another word, Li Shoshan lifted his hoe and swung it high toward Li Daniu. Horror surged through Li Xiaozong. She could not let her brother take the punishment for her choices. Limping, she threw herself in front of him. The wooden hoe handle crashed heavily against Li Xiaozong's back. She cried out in pain. Even tigers do not devour their own cubs. How cruel can you be? Never before had his son roared at him. Li Shoshan flinched before his bloodshot eyes. Regret stirred in him. No father ought to strike his own daughter. Still, he could not bear such disrespect from his son. What are you yelling about? Where are your manners? Who taught you such insolence? Li Dania cared only for the girl in his arms. Somer, are you hurt? Why were you so foolish? My skin is thick. I am used to beatings. Why take this for me? At the doorway, Su Chunhua and her son watched with smug satisfaction. Su Chunhua snorted. Husband, it is not that I am cruel. Spare the rod, spoil the child. You spoiled them with softness, and look what has become of them. Now he dares shout at you. Li Shoshan thought his wife spoke sense. This was the first time his son had ever raised his voice against him. He reached for the hoe, but the memory of striking his daughter stayed his hand. Instead, he pulled off his shoe and began beating Li Daniu with it. Normally Li Daniu would cover his head when beaten, but holding his sister in his arms, he could only expose his back and shoulders and the back of his head to the blows. Li Xiaozong watched. Her father believed every word the step-mother said. He ignored them being starved, yet punished them brutally simply for taking grain to fill their bellies. She could not bear to stay in this house another moment. Brother, I want to divide the household and separate from them. Dizzy from the blows to his head, Li Dania thought he had misheard. Songer, what did you say? Even Li Shoshan heard those words, and his arm froze mid-swing. Li Xiaozong met her brother's eyes. Brother, take me away. Let us live on our own. If her brother refused, she would leave alone. Li Danio did not answer right away. He thought over everything that had happened these past few days. Their birth mother had died when Li Xiaozong was 5 years old. At first, he had treated the step-mother as his real mother. Yet under her rule, they endured beatings, insults, and constant hunger. Worse still, without his or their father's knowledge, she had planned to send Li Xiaozong away for a marriage exchange. Even after learning of this, their father had not stood up for his daughter, blaming the siblings instead. His sister was terrified of being taken away. Seeing his silence, Li Xiaozong slipped out of his embrace and stood unsteadily on one leg. Brother, I will not force you. This home belongs to the Wu family now. Watch your back from now on. Do not let yourself be used and betrayed. She turned toward Li Shoshan in the doorway. I am leaving today. Write me a severance document. From now on, we will have nothing more to do with one another. Even if I end up begging for food, I shall never set foot in this house again. Li Shoshan frowned deeply. Speak no nonsense. This is the Li family's home. Li Xiaozong laughed bitterly. Is it? In this house, those who carry the Li surname are treated as beasts of burden, while Su Chanhua and her son are the true masters. Are you truly blind or only pretending to be? She had no wish to argue further. If Li Shoshan chose to be exploited, that was his affair. She had hoped Li Danyu would come with her, but she would not compel him. She simply could not endure more mistreatment and schemes. Songer, are you certain? Li Danyu paused, then added, Our Li village has suffered 3 years of severe drought. This year's harvest may not reach even a tenth of normal yields. Villagers say the court plans to resettle people from our disaster-stricken county to other regions. Resettlement? That amounted to fleeing famine. Li Xiaozong's heart sank. She had woken in this body with a lame leg, hoping only to escape this household, yet news of famine-driven migration greeted her. From documentaries, she knew well what such journeys entailed. People abandoned their homes and struggled for survival along the road. When grain ran out, they fought over wild herbs and bark. Clean water grew scarce. They drank muddy, filthy water instead. They traveled hundreds of miles on foot, scorched by the sun and frozen by bitter winds. The sick and injured had no doctors or medicine. Dysentery and festering wounds were everywhere. The old, weak women and children were easily abandoned by the traveling crowds. Fighting over food, plundering, and bullying were commonplace. One misstep could lead to starvation, disease, or freezing to death. She already had a lame leg. If she joined the migrant crowds, she would be the first one to be reduced to nothing. Brother, I'm going to take refuge with Grandma. Grandma won't turn me away. Li Danyu's lips trembled. Songer, do you think I would abandon you? Wherever you go, I will go. Li Xiaozong looked up at him. Brother, have you thought this through? Li Danyu nodded. I don't know for sure. All I know is you are my little sister, and I have to protect you. I wronged you in the past, and I will never let you suffer again. With her elder brother's protection, she felt far less afraid. What was more, if her brother stayed, he would only end up working like an ox for Su Chanhua and her 2 sons. Brother, I knew you were the best to me. Rest assured, if there is a bite of food for me, you will never go hungry. Her words rang hollow, for she had no idea how she would feed herself with her lame leg. Li Shoshan stood by like an outsider, holding a pair of straw sandals in his hands, listening to the brother and sister make their plans. What nonsense are you spouting? Apologize to your mother at once. Now that Li Danyu had promised to stand by her, Li Xiaozong held back no longer. She had earlier considered demanding a household split, fearing her brother would be too shocked to agree. But with her brother's pledge, she no longer wanted a simple household division. If they merely split the household, her father and stepmother would still hold authority over her marriage. Everything she had fought for today would then be for nothing. Husband of Wu Chunqing, can you not understand a word we say? My brother and I have just made up our minds. We want to sever ties with this family. Li Danyu's eyes went wide. He had only intended to shield his younger sister, not cut off all family bonds. Could kinship just be cast aside like that? A father was still a father. He shared his blood. How could one simply renounce that bond? Before Li Danyu could speak, Wu Chunqing could no longer hold his tongue. Uncle Li, you ought to sever ties with them. I will see to your old age care and give you a proper burial when you pass away. Seeing how readily Li Shoshan believed him, Li Xiaosong could only feel scorn. Wu Chunqing and his mother had been part of the Li household for 10 years. Over those 10 years, Li Shoshan had treated Wu Chunqing better than his own biological son Li Daniu. Naturally, his own daughter counted for even less in his eyes. Wu Chunqing had never once called him father, yet he spoke of tending him in old age and burying him. Only a fool would believe that. Eyes glistening, Li Shoshan nodded. Chunqing, I always knew you were a dutiful boy. Unlike these two ungrateful brats, who can bring themselves to wound my heart by speaking of severing kinship. Li Xiaozong made no move to expose the lie. Since Li Shoshan thought so highly of Wu Chunqing, she wished them well in their pretend father-son devotion. That way, Li Shoshan might consent to cutting ties. Standing off to one side, Su Chunhua weighed the gains and losses in her mind. Li Xiaozong had once been quiet and withdrawn, thin and plain looking. Still, she was a girl. Even without a marriage exchange, she could be wed off for a handsome bride price, and no one in the village could raise objections. Li Daniu, moreover, was the household's main laborer. Li Shoshan was getting on in years and could not match the strength of 18-year-old Li Daniu. If ties were cut and the household split at this point, all the effort of the past 10 years would be wasted. Husband, you must not do this. The children are only speaking in anger. Blood-related family cannot cast each other aside so lightly, or the whole village will laugh at us. Li Shoshan had never truly wanted to sever ties. He was merely hurt by those words. Ever since the children's birth mother died, he had tried to fill both parental roles. Busy farming alone, he could not look after the children properly. So he had taken Su Chunhua through an introduction. He had hoped to give the children a complete home. Xiaozong had only been 5 back then, far too young to go without a mother. He had done all of this for his children. The more he thought about it, the more he felt his good intentions had come to nothing. He huffed, full of self-pity. I have raised 2 cold-hearted creatures. The villagers already mock me. What more have I to fear? You keep saying your stepmother treats you badly. Ask your own consciences. If she disliked you, why would she speak up for you just now? Having spoken, he hunched his shoulders and stole glances at Li Daniu and Li Xiaozong. Li Daniu looked utterly lost, head hanging, not knowing what to do. Li Xiaozong, however, looked delighted. From what you say, you agree. Since you give your consent, that settles it. She nudged Li Daniu beside her. Brother, go fetch village elder uncle. Ask him to come and bear witness. Li Daniu lifted his head. Somer, you only want to stay with Grandma for a while. And I will go with you. Why do we need village elder uncle? They needed the village elder for the severance of kinship. Otherwise, sooner or later the stepmother would sway their father, forcing her into an unwanted marriage or arranging a match to benefit Wu Chunqing. Only by cutting all ties could they no longer plot against her. Li Xiaozong understood why Li Daniu hesitated. Li Daniu was Li Shoshan's biological son, in both flesh and spirit. Furthermore, Li Daniu held the deep-rooted belief that a father could treat his children however he pleased, a mindset that could not be changed with a few words. As she pondered how to bring the village elder over, she spotted Wu Chunqing slipping out of the courtyard like a thief. Li Xiaozong did not stop him. It was convenient to have someone else run the errand. Seeing the brother and sister fall silent, Li Shoshan assumed they had only been bluffing to frighten him. He glanced at Su Chunhua. Since she was no longer pressing the matter of the stolen grain, he intended to let the whole incident drop. Where are you going? Li Xiaozong saw her father trying to slip away and shouted to stop him. Li Shoshan halted, inwardly cursing his daughter for lacking sense. He had meant to overlook everything, yet his foolish daughter had to call him out. Su Chunhua's eyes turned sharp. She shot Li Xiaozong a sideways glare, then gave Li Shoshan a shove. Your father has work to do. Where would your food and clothing come from? You carry on with this nonsense. Must he stand here indulging you? Staggering from the push, Li Shoshan grabbed his hoe and tried to leave. Midday drew near under the blazing sun. He had only eaten a bowl of thin rice gruel the previous morning, and his steps were unsteady. Dizzy, he reached the courtyard gate, only to see Wu Chunqing approaching with the village elder. Li Shoshan shook his head to clear it. He hunched forward to greet him. Cousin, what brings you here? Village elder Li Xiaotian shot a glance at him, then at Wu Chunqing beside him. Chunqing came for me. One moment he says you want to sever kinship, the next that you intend to split the household. Fifth brother, what on earth is going on? Li Shoshan lifted his heavy, lidded eyes toward Wu Chunqing, who shook his head innocently. None of this was his fault. It was the Li siblings who had spoken of a split. He had merely passed along their words. Li Shoshan looked away, his back bowed. Cousin, it is nothing more than children's foolish prattle. Li Shoutian's expression darkened. Prattle? The village keeps me busy enough. Do you think I sit idle? You only add to my troubles. With that, the village elder turned to leave. Wu Chunqing had gone to so much trouble fetching him, he could not let him walk away. He quickly stepped in his path. Village elder, you cannot leave. That wicked girl Li Shaosong herself said she wants to renounce her place in this family. Come and see for yourself. What? The village elder still burned from being sent on a fool's errand, and now he heard that a young girl wished to cast off her own clan. Had he failed as clan elder? Hands behind his back, he strode into the courtyard. Villagers curious to see what was happening crowded through the gate behind him. Li Shoshan sighed, knowing he could not hold the elder back. Once the elder stepped inside, the matter might well become reality. When Li Shaozong saw the bearded village elder enter, she pinched her own bony thigh hard. Tears streamed down her face at once. Village elder uncle, thank goodness you have come. You must do justice for me. Thinking of her sudden transmigration into this destitute time filled with endless misfortunes, she wept all the more bitterly. The anger in the village elder faded considerably at the sight of her distress. He coughed, softening his tone so he would not frighten the girl. Somer, tell uncle what wrong has been done to you. Do not cry so. Tears flowed freely and would not stop. Village elder uncle, my stepmother planned to force me into a marriage exchange to secure a wife for her own son. Shocked by this claim, the village elder fixed a sharp look on Su Chunhua. Fifth brother's wife, what is this about? Su Chunhua burned with rage, wishing she could tear Li Shaozong apart, yet faced the elder's questioning. She would never admit the truth. Village elder, this is slander. I never spoke of any marriage exchange. Do not listen to this child's wild talk. She had made private arrangements with the Zhao family. None of the Li men, let alone outsiders, knew a thing. As long as she denied it, no one could prove anything. She added in a hurt, tearful voice, everyone says being a stepmother is thankless. I refuse to believe it. I thought genuine care would win genuine affection. Little did I know. She could not go on and wiped her eyes with her sleeve. The onlookers felt sympathy for Su Chunhua. A widow who had remarried with her son already had a hard lot. To be pushed around by her husband's 2 children must make life unbearable. Watching her weep so openly, many villagers concluded the 2 Li children must be bullying their stepmother and Wu Chunqing. Why speak such things, Shaozong? One villager said. You were only 5 when she came. Would you even have survived without her? That is right, another echoed. One ought not to be ungrateful. Having grown up, you must not cast aside your conscience. As Su Chunhua wiped her tears, she rejoiced inwardly. The villagers saw how much she suffered. Li Shoshan hung his head even lower. He felt terrible for his second wife and stepson. He felt foolish for ever doubting her when his children had complained. Li Dania waved his hands frantically, trying to say it was not so, that Su Chunhua withheld food from Shaozong. The more upset he grew, the redder his face became, and the less he could utter. Hearing the crowd side with himself and his mother, Wu Chunqing tilted his chin upward, looking down his nose at the brother and sister. Enraged by such twisted logic, Li Shaozong forgot to cry. She rolled up her sleeve, revealing bruises all over her arm. These marks were beaten into me by my stepmother. Injuries do not lie. Bruises normally faded within 7 days. Many marks on her arm were still fresh, clearly from recent beatings. Those who had just sympathized with Su Chunhua fell silent. Elderly villagers clucked their tongues in pity. Who has ever known a kind stepmother? Shaozong is always quiet, head bowed, hardly speaking. Could she truly be the bully? This was Granny Sun, who lived in the yard behind theirs. From her home, she could see into the Li courtyard. More than once she had watched Su Chunhua beat Shaozong in secret without hearing a single cry. She supposed the child had learned that crying only brought worse punishment. Since it was a family affair and no one reported it, she had kept out of it. Today, the girl had finally reached her breaking point. Li Shoshan lowered his head again, torn. Both sides were his kin. In his mind, they were all one family, and ought not to make such a fuss drawing lines between each other. The village elder no longer knew what to think. He had assumed the girl was inventing grievances to force a household split. The fresh bruises told of long-term abuse. Fifth brother, what have you to say for yourself? Li Shoshan had nothing to say and stayed quiet, pretending to think. Li Xiaozong knew his character. Slow, witted as he would never stand on her side. She hopped forward on one leg. Village elder uncle, this lame leg is also their doing. She pointed at Su Chunhua, forced me to marry into the Zhao family for a marriage exchange for her son. When I refused, she beat me. In despair, I tried to end my own life. The rope broke, and I survived. Villagers murmured. A marriage exchange ought to be for her own brother, not for an outsider's benefit. Li Xiaozong gave Sister Lu a grateful glance. Not everyone in the crowd was merely watching for amusement. Some dared speak up for justice. She did not expect the villagers to force a severance of kinship, yet their support eased her heart. Su Chunhua flew into a rage. Ungrateful girl. Now that you no longer need me, you invent lies to ruin my name. You do not just want to cut ties, you want to drive me out. Voices divided among the onlookers. Some thought Su Chunhua made sense. If Xiaozong had suffered beatings for so long, why speak up only now? Others thought she had finally found the courage to resist. Just then a woman pushed through the crowd, her round dark face blazing with anger. Her eyes locked on Su Chunhua. You woman Su. We agreed your stepdaughter would marry my son in our exchange match. Why go back on your word? Are you making a fool of me? At the sight of old Madame Zhao, Su Chunhua flinched. What was she doing here? She hurried over and tried to pull her aside. Let us talk in a few days. We have family trouble today with so many onlookers. This is not the time. Old Madame Zhao thought Su Chunhua was tricking her. Accustomed to getting her way in the village, she would not be brushed off. She pulled free. We agreed to this match. Times are hard with the drought. No one has spare grain or money, so we settled on an exchange. I did not complain about your thin, plain stepdaughter. Yet you deceive me. You must give me a clear answer today. When will you send her over? Now the villagers understood the truth. Many felt fooled for having pitted Su Chunhua only moments before. They pointed fingers, demanding answers. No decent person acts like this. As the saying goes, when there is a stepmother, there is also a stepfather. Li Xiaoshan looks honest, yet he cannot keep order in his own home. Ashamed and angered by the public blame, Li Xiaoshan squatted down, burying his face in his knees. Li Xiaozong hopped forward again. Village elder uncle, when I told my father about this, instead of defending me he beat me twice. Since this home has no place for me, I will leave. She glanced at Li Xiaoshan, who dared not lift his head. Even if I have to beg for food, I will never set foot in the Li household again. Fifth brother, speak up. Hiding will not solve anything, the village elder frowned, staring at him. Li Xiaoshan had to raise his head. He said only 4 words. I will not agree. He believed his daughter was merely throwing a tantrum. She had turned their private trouble into a public spectacle for the whole village. He had always tried to keep a low profile, and now his reputation was ruined. Li Xiaozong frowned upon hearing his refusal. Must I go on enduring beatings and insults? Or are you truly going to send me to the Zhao family to get Wu Chunqing a wife? She pointed toward Wu Chunqing in the crowd. All eyes turned to him. Uncomfortable under so many gazes, Wu Chunqing muttered, Why is everyone staring at me? With the marriage exchange scheme exposed, Su Chunhua abandoned thoughts of getting a bride, price for Xiaozong. Grain was scarce in the household. Getting rid of 2 extra mouths to feed mattered far more. Pushing old Madame Zhao aside, she stepped forward. Everyone knows how thankless being a stepmother is. If you are lenient, people say you neglect the children. If you discipline them, people say you abuse them. A stepmother cannot win. Some villagers nodded. There was truth in that. Hand pressed to her chest as if wounded, Su Chunhua continued, Husband, if the children truly wish to sever ties, let us grant them their wish. Let this be the last kindness I show them. Severing kinship meant they could claim none of the family property. Su Chunhua would gladly see them gone for good. Li Daniel had only wanted a household split so he could live separately with his younger sister. He had never dreamed of cutting all bonds. When his father grew old and feeble, he still intended to care for him. Kinship could not be cast aside. Glancing up at the scorching sun, the village elder knew drought threatened the crops and he had urgent work elsewhere. He had no wish to waste more time on this quarrel. He turned to Li Xiaozong once more. Have you truly thought this through? If you sever ties, you will have nothing of your own. Times are harsh. The whole county may well flee famine after the autumn harvest. How will a young girl survive out on her own? Li Xiaozong had already planned her escape. She would go to her maternal grandmother's home. From memory, her maternal grandparents had always treated her with great kindness. After Su Chunhua came to the Li house, Visits had grown difficult, and they had slowly lost contact. I have thought it through, village elder uncle. Father says he will rely on Wu Chunqing for his old age care. I have nothing left binding me here. Squatting on the ground, Li Shoshan rumbled, I will not agree. Growing frustrated, Su Chunhua strode over to him. Husband, you cannot force affection. Their hearts are already turned away. Holding them against their will only breed resentment. Li Shoshan shook his head and repeated stubbornly, I will not agree. Losing patience, the village elder could not compel a man to cast off his own children. Enough. I have pressing duties. If you will not split, then learn to live together in peace. Fifth brother, you must take charge of your household properly. He gave Su Chunhua a long, hard look. He would keep a close eye on her from now on. After all, Li Shaozong was a member of the Li family. No outsider ought to bully her. Seeing her own matter still unresolved, old Madame Zhao thought that since the village head of Lijia village was present, he ought to pass judgment on her behalf. Village Headley, don't go. My business isn't settled yet. Village Headley halted in his tracks. What is it? Hasn't this matter already been dealt with? Our village will never condone arranged marriage swaps. You'd better go ask in some other village. When a family marries off a daughter, they ought to prepare a proper dowry so she may hold her head high in her husband's home. Such swap marriages simply would not be tolerated in their village. Old Madame Zhao grew furious. She planted her hands on her ample hips. You have to handle this whether you want to or not. If it weren't for that woman surnamed Sue, my son would already be married. She kept swearing things would work out, so I turned down other prospects for him. Years earlier, her son had suffered a high-grade fever that lasted 8 days. Once the fever broke, his mind never fully recovered. Everyone in the area knew of his condition. Even for swap marriage arrangements, families would demand a bride price, payable in silver or grain. Only Su Chunhua had asked for neither silver nor grain. She had only wanted a daughter-in-law for the exchange. Old Madame Zhao had not wanted to let such an opportunity slip away. One villager recognized old Madame Zhao. Aren't you the mother of that simple-minded young man? Old Madame Zhao spat in the direction of the speaker. Your son is the simple-minded one. My boy is just naive. He's sharp enough. Save your breath, scoffed the woman who had spoken earlier. Everyone for miles around knows he calls every woman he sees his wife and constantly sucks on his fingers. She burst out laughing, and the other villagers joined in. Old Madame Zhao's face burned red. She waved her hand. It's none of your business. I'm not arranging a marriage with any of you, so mind your own affairs. Li Dania clenched his fists until his knuckles creaked. So his stepmother had planned to force Zhong'er to marry a mentally impaired man. No wonder his younger sister had tried to hang herself. He had been reluctant to sever ties with his father before, but fear washed over him now. What if, when his back was turned, Zhong'er was dragged off to wed that man? How could he ever face his late mother and his sister then? Father, you heard everything. Give us a straight answer. Will you stand by them and their child, or will you stand by your own children, my sister and me? Li Shanshan lifted his gaze toward Li Daniu, then lowered it again. I will not allow this. Li Dania clenched his fists even tighter, grinding his teeth. His father's refusal to take a clear side was plain favoritism toward his stepmother and her child. Since his father had chosen his stepmother, Li Daniu uncurled his fists. Uncle Village Head, my sister is right. We are no longer wanted in this household. Let father live with his new family. My sister and I will leave. Su Chunhua's eyes darted about. You want to sever family ties? She deliberately brought the matter out into the open, so they could not go back on their word later. Severing ties meant no share of the family property. Yes, Li Dania said firmly in one sharp word. Li Shaozong turned her head in surprise to look at her elder brother. He had been unwilling to cut ties only a short while ago, yet now he was resolute upon learning what sort of man old Madame Zhao's son was. Brother, thank you. She silently resolved to give her elder brother the very first bite of any food she got, even if they had to beg for their meals. Li Daniu's eyes grew red. He stroked her hair. How much suffering had his foolish little sister endured? He had failed to protect her before. Never again would he let anyone harm her. Uncle Village Head, please draw up a document severing our family bonds. From this day onward, my sister and I will have no connection to this household. Even if we end up wandering and begging, we shall not be a burden to anyone. Realizing they truly meant it, Li Shanshan spoke in alarm. I forbid it. Hearing the same reply again, Li Shaozong frowned. She glanced at Su Chunhua and knew what the woman feared most. Very well. If you refuse to sever ties, then we will divide the household. There are 5 mu of land, to be split 4 ways for everyone of the Li bloodline. My brother and I will take 2.5 mu, that is hardly unreasonable. We also demand half of all stored grain. At that, Su Chunhua rushed over and began beating Li Shanshan. Do you want me dead, just like your late wife? Answer them. What are you waiting for? The mention of death weighed heavily on Li Shanshan's heart. He did not wish to lose another spouse. Very well, let the ties be severed. With both sides in agreement, the village head spread paper and ink onto a wooden stool in the courtyard and wrote 2 copies of the severance document. He then told them to press their thumb. Prince. When Li Shanshan saw it was really going to happen, he sank down and refused to move. Su Chunhua coaxed him. The children are merely throwing a fit. Just press your thumb, print. Blood ties cannot truly be broken by a slip of paper. Li Shanshan thought that made sense and slowly rose to his feet, holding his aching lower back. As he walked past Li Xiaozong, he let out a heavy sigh. This is sheer foolishness. Li Xiaozong ignored him. Before pressing her thumb, print, she skimmed the document. It stated chiefly that they would no longer be obligated to provide for Li Shanshan in his old age. There were 2 copies of the severance paper. Li Xiaozong neatly folded hers and tucked it inside her clothing. The village head had other duties to attend to. He chased the onlookers away and left with his hands behind his back, no longer concerning himself with their domestic strife. Old Madame Zhao, however, refused to leave. She was not a villager of Lijia village and saw no reason to obey the village head. Su Chunhua, you owe me an explanation. I am not leaving until I get it. Old Madame Zhao sat herself down on a wooden stool in the courtyard and clumsily crossed her legs. Su Chunhua had nearly forgotten about this troublesome woman. As you can see, they have severed ties with our family. They are none of my concern now. If you want her for your daughter-in-law, go speak to her yourself. Enraged by that reply, old Madame Zhao jumped to her feet, one hand on her hip and the other finger pointed straight at Su Chunhua's face. I care nothing for that. I hold you responsible for producing a girl. Since that one is no longer yours, you have your own birth daughter, do you not? Su Chunhua's own daughter Xiaoer was only 9 years old. The old woman dared to set her sights on her child. Su Chunhua spat at her face. Get out of here. If you so much as think about my daughter again, I will make you regret it. She turned toward her son, who stood watching. Chunqing, this woman speaks nonsense and has designs on your little sister. Grab something and drive her out. Wu Chunqing could not be bothered. They only shared one parent. If trading Xiaoer could get him a wife, he would welcome it. Su Chunhua waited for her son to stand up for her, yet he did not move. She easily guessed what he was thinking. You ungrateful boy. If you disobey me, I will never arrange a marriage for you. Those words struck home. Wu Chunqing snapped out of his apathy. He glanced toward the wall where a hoe leaned. Seeing this, old Madame Zhao knew better than to stay. This is not over. Mark my words. She fled in a panic. Su Chunhua squared her shoulders and looked down her nose at Li Xiaozong. Be off with you, you ungrateful brats. Your father wasted his affection on you too. All my kindness was for nothing. Li Xiaozong had no desire to waste breath quarreling. Leaning on Li Dania's arm, she hopped back to their room to gather a few pieces of clothing. Su Chunhua followed her and leaned against the door frame with folded arms. Let me make this clear. You may not take a single thread or a scrap from this house. You severed ties. This is not a household division. Li Xiaozong looked at her tattered clothes, patched over and over until they threatened to fall apart. They were hardly worth taking. Still, she would rather discard them than leave them for Su Chunhua. She began folding her garments. Su Chunhua dropped her arms and lunged to snatch them away. Cold weather was coming. Every extra layer meant warmth. Put those down. You are no longer part of this family. You cannot take anything. Li Dania stepped between them, shielding Li Xiaozong. That allowed her to finish packing her bundle. She slung the bundle over her shoulder and took hold of Li Dania's arm. Brother, gather your clothes as well. Furious at the thought of them taking more things, Su Chunhua shouted. Li Shanshan, are you paralyzed? Can you not see your wolf, cub children bullying me? If she had had another option, she would never have married the quiet, unresponsive Li Shanshan. He ignored most household troubles and only knew how to labor from dawn till dusk. What good was such a husband? Li Shanshan squatted by the doorway. Hearing his wife's genuine anger, he grabbed a broom leaning against the wall. Li Daniu, If you keep misbehaving, I will beat you. As Li Dania reached the doorway, the broom came swinging toward his head. He raised his arm instinctively to block it. Li Shanshan. Stop. Li Xiaozong called out sharply. Startled to hear his daughter address him by his full name, Li Shanshan froze mid-swing. You? What did you call me? Li Xiaozong would not meet his eyes. We belong to separate households now. What right do you have to strike us? Before Li Shanshan could reply, Su Chunhua stepped out of the house. So you understand. This is our home. What business do you two outsiders have lingering here? Wu Chunqing watched on, secretly pleased. No one would hold him back any longer. This house would belong to the Wu family. He could do whatever he pleased. You had better leave. Hanging about another's home is shameful. Li Dania snorted and bent down. Songer, climb onto my back. Let us be gone. Li Xiaozong climbed onto her brother's back. Together they walked out of the Li family courtyard. Once outside, Li Xiaozong breathed in deeply, feeling lighthearted. Brother, do you blame me? Li Dania shook his head. Do not say silly things. You are my sister. Wherever you go, I go. Grief gnawed at him. His father treated Wu Chunqing like his own flesh and blood, while he, the biological son, was treated like a stepchild. He had even heard his father say that Wu Chunqing would care for him in old age. Li Dania walked quickly, soon leaving Lijia village far behind. Seeing sweat pour down her brother's head, Li Xiaozong said, Brother, let us rest a moment. Li Dania shook his head. I am not tired. Li Xiaozong pursed her lips. Brother, I am thirsty. I want some water. Only then did Li Dania slow his pace and head toward a large tree beside the dirt road. Wait for me here. I will look for water. He spoke bravely, yet worry gnawed at him. A 3-year drought had parched Lijia village. Even the village wells showed exposed mud. Where would they find water out here? Watching Li Dania's figure vanish into the distance, Li Xiaozong sighed. Other people who transmigrated into this world got magical spatial treasures. She had also crossed over from another world, so why had she received nothing? Right now she craved a cold energy drink. She felt weak, and the sun blazed hot. Suddenly something cold pressed against her palm. Li Xiaozong jumped in surprise. Staring down at it, she nearly laughed out loud. Better late than never. My special ability has finally arrived. She twisted open the cap and drank deeply. The cool liquid soothed her insides. Her spirits lifted at once. She did not know if she could summon anything she wished, or only this drink. Nor did she understand where it came from. She tentatively whispered, I want to go into the space. The next instant, she stood in a place both familiar and strange. It was the world of a farm simulation game she had once played. Every decoration and crop growing in the fields matched exactly what she remembered. She recalled that besides the farm, the game also had a marketplace where goods could be traded. Her heart hammered wildly. If she had access to this, starvation would no longer threaten her. She would survive even if they became refugees. But how could she open the marketplace? The moment she thought of it, a screen appeared before her eyes, the exact in-game marketplace she remembered. Players earned coins to expand farmland and buy seeds. She felt grateful she had played the game diligently. All her fields had been upgraded to high-yield black soil. Her in-game coin balance was low, for she had spent most coins upgrading land. Still, if spent carefully, those coins ought to keep them from starving while on the run. Songer, where are you? Li Dania was nearly in tears. He had only stepped away briefly to search for water, yet his little sister had vanished. Hearing his shouts from inside the space, Li Xiaozong willed herself out and reappeared exactly where she had been sitting. Li Dania paced anxiously, scanning everywhere. Li Xiaozong moved around behind the tree trunk. Brother. Li Dania spun toward her voice. Songer, where did you go? You scared me half to death. Li Xiaozong pointed at the ground. I stepped behind the tree to relieve myself. Though confused, Li Dania did not press her further to avoid embarrassment. Songer, I found no water. But I recall a pond not far ahead. Let me carry you there to drink. Li Xiaozong was no longer thirsty, yet her brother still suffered. She climbed back onto his warm, sweat-soaked back. When they reached the pond, they found no water left, only thick mud. Li Dania let out a long sigh. The drought has dried everything up. I fear we truly shall have to join the refugees. Thanks to her space and marketplace, Li Xiaozong no longer feared the journey. Her only worry was how to give her brother water without raising suspicion. Brother, I remember there is another well east of here. Go check for us. Li Dania had no memory of such a well, yet he obeyed and headed east to search. Li Xiaozong's stomach rumbled. Since arriving in this time, she had eaten only one proper meal. Even so, Li Shanshan had accused her of stealing grain. She wanted to buy cooked food from the marketplace, yet hesitated. She must conserve her coins to survive. Luxuries such as cakes and spicy noodles were out of the question. Opening the marketplace, she skipped over expensive treats and went straight for cheap, filling staple foods. She bought 2 large white steamed buns and a bottle of mineral water. Thinking salt was vital for strength, especially for her brother who carried her everywhere, she also bought a packet of pickled mustard greens. A sharp twinge in her injured leg reminded her of the medical fee owed to Dr. Wang. She had no silver. Once her brother returned, she would ask what goods could be used as currency in this era. She intended to honor her debt. Spotting a broken earthen jar nearby, she hooked it toward her with a branch. She drank half the bottle of water and poured the rest into the jar. Li Dania had not wandered too far. Times were unsafe with displaced people roaming the countryside. He dared not leave his sister alone for long. Finding no water, he turned back intending to carry her further afield. Li Xiaozong saw him returning looking worn out. She sat leaning against the tree and waved. "Brother, look what I have found." Li Dania held little hope. On this drought-stricken road, what could possibly be found? But when he saw the round, white steamed buns in her hands, his Adam's apple bobbed and his eyes widened. "Little sister, where did these come from?" He recognized steamed buns. Once, selling grain in town, he had smelled them steaming in bakeries. The rich aroma alone had made his mouth water. Li Xiaozong smiled and held them out, gesturing toward the broken jar beside her. She lowered her voice, as though afraid passers-by might hear. "I found them behind this tree. There is also half a jar of water." Li Dania rubbed his hands together, overwhelmed. Then caution struck him. White steamed buns were extremely precious. Whoever had lost them would grieve. He looked all around. "Who lost these buns? Whose are they?" Li Xiaozong's smile froze. Her brother was far too honest. She feared his shouting would draw strangers who might claim the food. "Brother, stop calling out. I already checked. There is nobody nearby." Li Dania shook his head. "One white steamed bun costs 4 copper coins. That is a great deal of money. We cannot take what is not ours." Li Xiaozong grew frustrated. If found would not work, how could she keep providing him food in future? The midday sun blazed high. Farmers rested indoors. No travelers could be seen on the road. Li Dania's throat was parched. But what shall we do for the person who lost them? Watching her brother scratch his head in distress, Li Xiaozong thought up a story. "Brother, I believe these were meant for me. When I nearly died after hanging myself, I dreamed of an old man with a long white beard. He said I was blessed with good fortune. Hardship would mark my early years, yet later I would receive whatever I needed." She lifted the bun higher. "I was just wishing for steamed buns, and here they are. Is that not marvelous?" Li Dania was half convinced. Ordinary folk could rarely afford white steamed buns. 4 copper coins for 1 bun could buy a jean of coarse flour. Enough to feed an entire household for a day. "Songer, then you eat them. I hear white steamed buns taste sweet." Li Xiaozong's heart ached. Her own brother had never even tasted a steamed bun. "Brother, there are 2. 1 for each of us." She held one out to him. Li Dania refused. White flour was too valuable. Her body needed nourishment far more than his. When Li Xiaozong tried to stand and hand it to him, a stab of pain shot through her injured leg. Li Dania hurried forward. "Do not move, Songer. Mind your leg." Li Xiaozong pressed the bun into his hand. Leaning against the tree, brother and sister bit into sweet steamed buns and ate the spicy pickled greens. To Li Dania, even the water tasted sweet. Wiping crumbs from her mouth, Li Xiaozong said, "Brother, we still owe Dr. Wang 10 copper coins for treating my leg. We have no silver. Could we repay him with goods?" Li Dania ate the last piece of pickled mustard green. It tasted better than meat. "I fear we can only leave the debt unpaid for now. One day I will pay him back." Li Xiaozong thought of their uncertain future. They might go to her maternal grandmother's home, or flee even farther. How would they ever find Dr. Wang again? She hated the idea of a lifelong unpaid debt. "Brother, could we pay him with steamed buns or rice?" Li Dania gave a bitter laugh. Her little sister still did not understand. Steamed buns and fine rice were not so easily obtained. Even while living at home, they had rarely eaten polished white rice. That was food for wealthy townsfolk. Seeing he would give her no useful answer, Li Xiaozong asked, "Brother, what price is rice in the county town?" Li Dania knew that. He had inquired at grain shops when selling harvests. Before the drought, one jean cost 10 copper coins. With these poor harvests, the price will surely have risen. Li Xiaosong was surprised. A single jean of rice would cover their 10-coin medical debt. She glanced at Li Daniu. They would depend entirely on each other from now on. Secrets could not stay hidden forever. She tilted her head toward him. Brother, if I could produce white rice out of nowhere, would you be afraid of me? Li Dania chuckled and ruffled her coarse yellow hair. Silly girl. If you really could do that, I would only be overjoyed. The words had barely left his mouth when a bag appeared in Li Xiaozong's hands. Through transparent packaging, white rice could clearly be seen. Zonger, where did this come from? Li Xiaozong fell back on her earlier story. I told you about that immortal elder. He said I would have whatever I needed. Afraid he would demand other treasures, she quickly added, except silver coins. Recovering from his shock, Li Dania tore a strip of cloth from his tunic and spread it flat on the ground. Zonger, pour the rice out. We cannot show this strange packaging to others. He tugged at the transparent bag. Li Xiaozong quietly returned the empty wrapper to her space. Li Dania stared in awe. He began to wonder if his sister was herself some kind of divine being. After eating the steamed bun and pickles, Li Dania felt strength return to his body. He lifted Li Xiaozong onto his back and hurried toward Wangjia village. A stream ran through the village entrance, yet drought had reduced it to scattered muddy puddles. Dr. Wang's house was enclosed by a bamboo fence. Its wooden gates stood open. Even before entering, they smelled bitter medicinal herbs. Dr. Wang sat in his yard sorting dried plants, sighing repeatedly. Our stock of herbs is nearly gone. We cannot even treat simple fevers and aches. His wife sighed alongside him. What can anyone do? In this drought, even wild vegetables are scarce, let alone medicinal plants. She worried over their household finances. Her husband always allowed villagers to run up medical bills and refused to press for payment, saying poor families had nothing to give. Is Dr. Wang home? Li Xiaozong called out, though she had already spotted him. Dr. Wang looked toward the gate. After a moment, he recognized the brother and sister. Have you come for more treatment for your leg? Unfortunately, my herbs are depleted. You would need to travel to town for proper care. Li Xiaozong had no money for further treatment. Simply staying alive and fed was challenge enough. Dr. Wang, we have come to repay our medical debt. With that, Li Dania carried her into the courtyard. Aunt Wang's lips curled upward the moment she heard they'd come to pay the medical fee. Which village are you from? How did you get here? Come, sit, and rest your feet. Li Xiaozong told her they were from Lijia village, then handed over a small cloth bundle she was holding. Aunt Wang took it. Feeling its weight, she guessed they were paying with grain again. Under ordinary circumstances, she might have been displeased. She would much rather have cash. But these were hard times. Grain prices in the county town were soaring day by day. Grain was the most precious commodity of all right now. Dr. Wang glanced at the grain. That bundle held at most 1 jean. His consultation fee was 10 copper coins. Still, no family had it easy these days. 1 jean would have to do. Husband. Aunt Wang gasped, holding out the gleaming polished rice for Dr. Wang to see. Dr. Wang's eyes widened. This, polished fine rice? A moment ago he had thought the payment insufficient. Now he felt they had given him too much. This is far too much fine rice. Take half of it back, that will be fair. Normally 1 jean of fine rice cost 10 copper coins. But with the famine raging, 1 jean fetched at least 15 copper coins. His fee was only 10 copper coins. He could not accept more than he was owed. Li Xiaozong waved her hand. It is quite all right. I am very grateful that you trusted me. Now that the fee is settled, we must be going. Hearing they were leaving, Li Dania slung Li Xiaozong onto his back and stepped out of the courtyard gate. The brother and sister set off once more toward their maternal grandmother's home. It was no short journey. They had set out at dawn, and dusk was falling, yet they still had not arrived. Brother, we are going to grandmother's house. Should we bring something? We cannot show up with nothing but ourselves. Li Dania slowed his pace. He knew full well it would look bad to arrive empty-handed. But the brother and sister had severed ties with their original family. They did not have a single grain of rice to their names. If not for the hope of having someone to rely on should they become refugees, he would never have had the nerve to turn up at his grandmother's door. Grandmother and grandfather would not say harsh words, but there were his aunts by marriage, plus cousins of all ages living under the same roof. Li Xiaozong saw her elder brother's worry and quickly shared her plan. Brother, have you forgotten? I can get whatever I need. I just cannot ask for too much, or the immortal will think I am greedy and stop granting me things. Lidania came to a complete halt. Somer, do not call upon that power unless there is absolutely no other way. If you ask for too much, and then we truly need something later, what if nothing comes? Li Xiaozong was reluctant as well. She did not have many gold coins in her shop, so she could not spend recklessly. That was why she had only taken steamed buns earlier. Still, they were coming to beg for shelter. Arriving empty-handed would not do. She thought it over, comparing local prices with those in her shop. Pork was reasonably priced in the shop, where it was all chilled fresh meat, yet pork sold for an outrageous price out here in the real world. Brother, let us bring 1 gene of pork. It will make grandmother and grandfather look good in front of others. Pork. Lidania shook his head vigorously. No, no. Pork is far too expensive. The immortal will surely think we are greedy. Lidania had another idea. Somer, ask for 2 gene of coarse brown rice instead. Brown rice is cheap. The immortal will not take offense. Leaning on her brother's back, Li Xiaozong opened her shop interface and navigated to the grains, rice, and oil section. Fine rice cost 3 gold coins per gene. Mixed coarse grains cost 6 gold coins per gene. 1 gene of pork cost 6 gold coins. Buying pork was the better choice. It was presentable and not overly costly. She made up her mind and closed the shop interface. Moonlight spilled over the rutted dirt road, lighting the path ahead. Liuzhuang village lay quiet. All Li Xiaozong could hear was her brother's breathing and the crunch of sand beneath his feet. Brother, everyone in the village seems to be asleep. Do you think grandmother's household has turned in for the night too? Lidania could not be sure. At this hour, country folk went to bed to save food. Sleeping meant they would not feel hunger pangs. Grandmother's house stood near the center of the village. Lidania stopped before the wooden fence gate. Li Xiaozong peered into the yard. There were 2 main rooms and 2 rows of side chambers. All was still inside, and the fence gate was tightly shut. She lowered her voice. Brother, they are asleep. We ought not to wake them. They had come seeking shelter. It was best not to disturb the household and risk making themselves unwelcome. They could meet everyone at dawn. A tree stump used for sitting on hot summer days stood by the gate. Lidania set his little sister down. He was soaked in sweat. His throat was parched, as though filled with sand, his tongue almost cracking from thirst. Li Xiaozong patted the empty spot on the stump. Brother, sit and rest for a while. Instead of squeezing onto the stump beside her, Lidania sat straight down on the ground and rubbed his aching calves. Li Xiaozong purchased 2 steamed buns and a bottle of mineral water. Lidania looked up and gave a start. His little sister had conjured food and drink out of thin air without a sound. Somer, do not ask for white, flour steamed buns next time. They must be very valuable. We must not make the immortal think we are greedy. Li Xiaozong said nothing in reply. Steamed buns were the cheapest option available. Secretly, she craved instant noodles with sausages, or even bread, which tasted far better than plain steamed buns. She handed 1 steamed bun to him and tilted her head with a smile. Brother, I told you before. As long as I have something to eat, you will never go hungry. Lidania took the bun and gave a simple, minded grin. I am lucky to have my little sister to look after me. Back in their old home, he had worked harder than an ox, but eaten worse than one. Even so, his stepmother had complained he ate too much. Night after night he had gone to sleep with his belt pulled tight against his empty stomach. Brother and sister sat outside the gate, waiting for sunrise. Down the main road, villagers carrying wooden buckets shuffled past, shoulders hunched. One man muttered to his companion. I waited half the day and only got half a bucket of water. Are we going to be parched to death? I do not grumble. Talking wastes saliva and makes your mouth drier. Lidania sighed. It seems Liuzhuang village suffers from worse drought than Lijia village. He had noticed it when they entered the village. The crops had failed to grow. Autumn would arrive soon, yet no rain had fallen. There would be no harvest this year. There had been at least some yield in the past 2 years. Farmers depended entirely on their crops. Without a harvest, what would they eat or wear? Li Xiaozong's eyelids grew heavy. She leaned against the fence and drifted off to sleep. Afraid she might topple over, Lidania shifted beside her to prop her up. Dawn broke. Birds chirped noisily in the branches. Li Xiaozong's mind woke, yet her eyelids felt glued shut. She rubbed them until she roused herself. Beside her, Lidania slept soundly with his mouth open and head tilted back. Taking the chance, Li Xiaozong bought 1 gene of streaky pork. She could not use a plastic bag, so she tore a strip of cloth from the frayed hem of Li Daniu's tattered tunic and tied the meat up in it. A creak echoed from within the courtyard. Li Xiaosong turned her head to look. A woman inside wore her hair pinned up with a twig. Her clothes were covered in patch upon patch. She caught sight of the figure outside the gate and looked over. She let out a small cry and clapped a hand to her chest. It was not fully light yet, and she had been startled by the head peeking out from beyond the wall. Li Xiaosong offered an awkward smile toward the woman in the yard. She did not know who this relative was and felt bad for frightening her. Recovering from her fright, the woman unlatched the fence gate and stared in confusion, glancing at Li Xiaosong then at Li Daniu, who still lay fast asleep on the ground. "Who are you? Why were they sleeping outside her gate?" It looked as though they had been there all night. Li Xiaosong quickly shook Li Daniu awake. "I am Li Xiaosong. This is my elder brother Li Daniu. Our mother was Lu Tsueju." The woman froze, then her brows drew together. Her confused expression hardened. Lu Tsueju had been her late sister-in-law. Li Shoshan had long since remarried. For the two children to turn up now, in this lean famine season, she could only assume they had come to leech off the family. Without another word, she walked back into the yard and raised her voice. "Visitors from Lijia village have arrived." Li Daniu awoke and crouched, ready to carry his little sister inside. Li Xiaosong sensed they were not welcome. It would be wiser to hold back and observe the situation before entering. More noise stirred inside the courtyard. Old Madame Lu was the first to hurry out, her face a mix of shock and uncertainty. "Eldest daughter-in-law, what did you say? Who has come?" Yang Shi pointed unwillingly toward the gate. "Mother, look. Do you recognize them?" Old Madame Lu followed her daughter-in-law's gesture. Her lips trembled. She stumbled 2 steps toward the gate, then halted. "Husband, come quickly, come see who is here." Li Xiaosong judged the moment right. "Brother, let us go in." She picked up the gene of pork hanging on the fence and climbed onto her brother's back. They stepped into the courtyard. Li Xiaosong shifted, signaling she wanted to get down. Li Dania set her gently on her feet and supported her with both hands. Li Xiaosong showed her white teeth in a smile. "Grandmother." Li Dania greeted her as well. "Grandmother. Little sister and I have come to see you." "Who is here?" Old man Lu emerged from the house. He was gaunt, skin stretched tight over his bones. Most of his hair had turned white, with only a few dark strands remaining. Tears welled in old Madame Lu's eyes. She did not answer her husband. She walked toward the brother and sister, cupping Li Xiaosong's thin cheeks in her wrinkled hands. Tears spilled over. "Songer, my poor child. You have suffered so much." Moved by her grandmother's grief, Li Xiaosong's own eyes grew moist. She shook her head. "Grandmother, I am not suffering." Old Madame Lu lowered her hands and took hold of Li Daniu's. "Dania, how did you two get here?" Before Li Dania could reply, old man Lu coughed and waved a hand. "Do not stand talking in the yard. Come inside the house." "Yes, come inside," old Madame Lu said, taking one of them by each hand. Li Xiaosong hopped along on one good leg into the room. Inside stood a modest earthen kang bed with a well-worn wooden table resting upon it. Old Madame Lu seated Li Xiaosong and Li Danio on the edge of the kang. Smiles crinkled her face, and she could not tear her eyes away from them. In the blink of an eye, Art Songer has grown so big. She turned to Li Danio. "And Danio has become a fine young man." She had been about to ask whether Li Shoshan had arranged a marriage for the 18-year-old Li Danio, but she swallowed the question. Li Xiaosong was frighteningly thin, her hair dry and yellow, only her large eyes stood out on her gaunt face. It was plain she had known hunger. Su Chanhua would never spend money arranging a bride for Danio. "Wife, who has come?" Lu Daju shuffled into the courtyard in straw sandals. Yang Shi glanced sourly toward the main room. "From Lijia village." "Who else would it be?" Lu Daju strode straight into the main house. Li Xiaosong looked up at his tall frame. She did not know him, yet guessed he was one of her 3 maternal uncles. Old Madame Lu smiled and beckoned him over. "Eldest son, come. See if you still recognize them." Lu Daju smiled. How could I fail to recognize Xiaosong and Danio? Hearing her grandmother call him eldest son, Li Xiaosong knew this was her eldest maternal uncle. She gave him a greeting. Li Dania stood to greet him too. "Songer hurt her leg and cannot stand for long," he explained, so his uncle would not think them rude. More footsteps sounded. Second uncle Lu Erxuan and third uncle Lu Sanshun entered the room. Everyone exchanged pleasantries for a while. Old Madame Lu, caught up in tears and laughter, had forgotten about Li Xiaozong's injury until that moment. Somer, how did you hurt your leg? Li Xiaozong held nothing back and told the whole story of her stepmother's cruelty. Old Madame Lu turned her head aside, tears streaming down her cheeks. Old Man Lu lit his long, stemmed tobacco pipe and puffed away. The three uncles standing by the door clenched their fists. Lu Dazhu ground his teeth. Let us go and confront her. Old Man Lu coughed sharply. The three brothers froze where they stood. Old Man Lu had thought it through. The three men could not very well attack a woman like Su Chunhua. That would make them a laughing stock. If they fought Li Shoshan, the two children would have nowhere to return to even if they wanted to. Leaning against the doorframe, Yang sure listened to Li Xiaozong's tale and felt heavy-hearted. She was a mother herself. If she died and her own children suffered beatings and hardship at a stepmother's hands, she would never rest in peace. She sighed deeply and headed for the kitchen. The two children had arrived the night before and must surely be hungry. Old Madame Lu shared her husband's reasoning. She held Li Xiaozong's hand, stroking the back of it over and over. Somer, how did you two travel here? Why were you waiting outside our gate at dawn? Li Xiaozong smiled sheepishly. Grandmother, we severed our ties with father. We left that home yesterday. We had nowhere else to go, so we came to see you and grandfather. Old Madame Lu's hand stiffened. What? Severed ties. The three brothers by the door exchanged glances. How had their 15-year-old niece come up with such a drastic way to escape the Li household? Old Man Lu exhaled tobacco smoke and coughed. It was the right thing to do. Do not go back. You will stay here. Father. Second Aunt Zhang sure raised her voice from outside. The family already barely scraped by. 2 extra mouths to feed would make life impossible for everyone. Old Man Lu said nothing, but looked toward his second son. Lu Erxuan felt his father's gaze and hissed at his wife. Zhang sure stamped her foot and stormed off. Mother, what is wrong? Who upset you? Lu Guilan ran to her mother's side. Zhang sure seized the chance to speak sarcastically. From now on we will have 2 extra people keeping us company. Will that not be lively? Lu Guilan glanced toward the main room. She had heard the children of her late aunt had arrived. Now that the aunt was dead, what obligation did their family have toward those children? Mother, are they not going to leave? Have they no home of their own? Zhang sure felt pleased. Her eldest daughter was clever and knew to stand firmly on her own family's side. Sister, do not say that. Lu Guixiong tugged at her elder sister's sleeve. Their cousins had only just arrived. It would wound them to hear such words. Zhang sure shoved her younger daughter's shoulder. Foolish girl, get out of my way. Lu Guixiong stumbled and nearly fell. Li Xiaozong heard every word spoken in the yard. A 3-year drought hung over the land. Before long everyone might become refugees. If she and her brother settled here, with whole stretches of land empty of people, human beings needed community, and she feared they would grow stifled and isolated. Yet, if they joined the refugee exodus, they needed a family to rely on. That was why they had come to their grandmother's home. She sensed the Lu family's reluctance. She did not wish to place a burden on her grandmother and grandfather. She shuffled toward the edge of the kang bed. Grandmother, we have come to visit you and grandfather. We ought to take our leave now. Old Madame Lu stretched out an arm to block her. Leave? Where would you go? Your mother was born into the Lu family. Her children belong to the Lu family too. Rest assured, as long as I live, this will be your home. That is right, Lu Dazha spoke up. With your eldest uncle here, you will not go hungry. Third uncle Lu Sanshun nodded in agreement. Stay with us. Warmth filled Li Xiaozong's heart. She knew how hard times were for every household. Taking in 2 extra people meant far more than just setting out 2 more chopsticks. In these days, every single grain of rice counted. She looked at Li Daniu, hoping her brother would make a decision. But Li Dania had no ideas of his own and would follow whatever his little sister chose. Li Xiaozong turned back and made up her own mind. She picked up the block of pork lying on the wooden table and held it out to her grandmother. Grandmother, this is a small gift from brother and me. It will help nourish you and grandfather. Old Madame Lu had not noticed the pork earlier. How could the 2 children, cast out from the Li family, have gotten hold of meat? Li Xiaozong saw her grandmother's confusion and explained. I took money from my stepmother's room. Li Dania shot a quick glance at his little sister then looked away. His sister had once kept quiet, but now she had grown quite good at bending the truth. Old Madame Lu hesitated whether to accept it. Even in ordinary times, few families could afford to buy pork, let alone in this famine year. Li Xiaozong pressed the meat into her grandmother's hands. "Grandmother, it is all I have to give. Please accept it." Old Madame Lu thought of the whole household and the discontent some might harbor. Accepting the gift would help quiet complaints. Third daughter-in-law, we are fortunate thanks to Tsonger. Take this meat and cook it, so everyone can have a taste of something rich. Feng sure took the meat and went to the kitchen. Yang sure was already there, lighting the fire and rinsing grain. Seeing the pork, she knew it must have been brought by the brother and sister. These children are so reckless. Driven from their home, and they still spend money on meat instead of saving every copper. Even as she chided them, she took the meat, sliced it thin, and rendered it into crispy cracklings that would keep for several days. The rich aroma of cooked pork filled the whole courtyard. Children gathered at the kitchen door, drawn by the smell. Zhang sure folded her arms and snorted. Buy one piece of meat and get to rely on this family for the rest of your life. What a bargain. Yang sure shot her a glance. It will not be for a lifetime. Xiaozong is 15 already and Dainyu 18. In a few short years they will be old enough to marry and build lives of their own. Zhang sure laughed sharply as though she had heard a great joke, her tone dripping with scorn. Dream on. Look at that girl's wretched appearance. Who would take her as a wife? And Dainyu, tall and strong as he is, he has no money. How can he marry? What girl would wed him? They own not a single house nor a strip of land. Where would they live? Survive on wind. Yang sure kept working at her task. Zhang sure's words were cruel, yet they spoke of harsh reality. Motherless children had no one to plan their futures, leaving them with nothing as they grew older. Time for dinner. Yang sure carried a basin of thin congee into the main room and set it on the square wooden table. Old Madame Lu smiled gently. Your eldest aunt is just like that. Her tongue is sharper than her heart. Li Xiaozong had first thought her eldest aunt, by marriage hard to get along with, yet she turned out to be kind-hearted. For all her complaints about scarce grain, she had still prepared food for them. Li Dania carried Li Xiaozong into the main room. The room was small, and there were not enough long wooden benches for everyone. Old Madame Lu seated Li Xiaozong beside herself. The congee was so watery you could count every grain of rice floating in it. Li Xiaozong felt almost ashamed to eat it. Old Madame Lu pushed a coarse ceramic bowl toward her. Songer, eat. Dania, you're a young man. Help yourself. Li Dania sighed to himself. His grandmother's household already struggled to get by, and now he and his sister added 2 more mouths to feed. He hated to take their food. Grandmother, I am not hungry. Half a bowl will be enough for me. Old Man Lu picked up a bowl and pressed it into his hands. How can you not be hungry? You left home yesterday and have barely eaten since. Do not overthink things. As long as there is food for me in this house, you two will not go hungry. Li Xiaozong could not help being moved by those words. Even with barely enough food for themselves, her grandmother's family did not treat them as burdens, but worried about their feelings. They were kinder than her own birth father. After the meal, Li Danio went to work in the fields with the men of the Lu family. Old Madame Lu pulled her eldest son Lu Daju aside and whispered a few words. Amid the household's bustle, Lu Daju soon returned, accompanied by an elderly man with a gray, white beard. Mother, I have fetched third uncle. Li Xiaozong studied the newcomer. He was her eldest uncle's third uncle. She struggled to sort out exactly how they were related. Before she could untangle the family connections, old Madame Lu hurried to welcome the man inside. Third cousin, thank you for coming. Please examine the child's leg and see whether it will leave a permanent injury. It was then that Li Xiaozong realized that Grandma had sent for a doctor for her. Dr. Lu stepped inside and gave Li Xiaozong a once-over. This child looks so much like Sueju. Alas, it's such a pity. Sueju had a hard fate and passed away so young. At the mention of her only daughter, old Lady Lu's tears welled up again. She wiped her eyes with her sleeve, afraid the child would miss her mother. Old Man Lu took several puffs from his dry tobacco pipe, and the smoke made him cough violently. Third brother, look at this child's leg. It's swollen all around. I wonder how she endured all these days. Li Xiaozong waved her hands repeatedly, not wanting her grandparents to worry. Grandma, Grandpa, it doesn't hurt. Really, it doesn't hurt. Having lived 2 lives, she had never known what it felt like to be cared for. She had not come to this world of her own will, and life had been harsh. Yet she had gained brother, sister affection with Li Danyu, as well as the love of her maternal grandparents. Tears pooled in Li Xiaozong's eyes. Seeing this, Dr. Lu assumed she was in pain. Bear with it. It will be over soon. He felt her leg through her clothes. There was very little flesh on Li Xiaozong's leg, so the diagnosis was straightforward. No fracture. It's not critical, but there is a bone crack. It will take at least a month for the swelling to go down. Will it be better in a month? Old Lady Lu pressed for a definite answer. Dr. Lu stood up and nodded. However, she must not walk about freely during this time. Even after the swelling subsides, she will need further rest. As the old saying goes, an injury to tendons or bones requires 100 days of recovery. To be safe, she must rest properly. 100 days before she could move normally. Li Xiaozong groaned inwardly. She had heard that saying many times in her previous life. Some of her classmates had gotten hurt and worn plaster casts, and back then she had thought 100 days was no big deal. Now that it was her turn, she truly understood what it was like to be confined. It felt like being imprisoned with no freedom, and it was miserable. On top of that, her injured leg throbbed and burned constantly. Old Man Lu tapped out his tobacco pipe on the ground, putting out the tobacco, and coughed twice. Is there anything we can do to ease the pain? The child shouldn't have to suffer like this. Dr. Lu let out a helpless sigh. In better times, we could gather herbs from the mountains to reduce swelling and promote blood circulation. But these days, you can barely dig up even grass roots, let alone medicinal herbs. Old Man Lu nodded with an He gestured for Dr. Lu to sit down. Dr. Lu took the water Feng Shui handed him and took a small sip, careful not to drink too much. Alas, before long, we might not even have drinking water left. Word is the well at the end of the village has run dry. Old Man Lu already knew. Earlier that morning, his youngest son had gone to fetch water and returned with an empty bucket. They had no choice but to go halfway up the mountain. There was a rocky cliff there, shaded by large trees all year round. The air stayed damp, and a little fresh water seeped out from the rock. The imperial court is talking about relocating disaster-stricken villagers from our county to other places. No one knows if the news is true. Deep down, he hated the thought of leaving. Lu Village was his root. Generations of his family had lived here. If they really had to leave, he would dream of coming back to Lu Village every night. Li Xiaozong sat on the edge of the kang and listened. Her elder brother had told her about this too. Li Village had also heard the rumor, and it was most likely true. She kept quiet while the adults talked. Li Dania came back around noon. Nothing grew in the fields, not even weeds, so there was no weeding to do. He wanted to talk to his maternal grandfather about the crops, but he swallowed his words. His uncles all had far more farming experience than he did. They knew full well what was happening, yet they still clung to a sliver of hope and refused to face reality. Old Man Lu was weaving a wicker basket with willow branches. He noticed Li Dania had something on his mind, but pretended not to see it. Danio, you must be tired. Go inside and rest. All right. Li Dania strode into the house. Grandma stopped stitching shoe soles and handed him a bowl of water. Drink some to quench your thirst. Li Daniu only took one small sip, leaving the rest for his uncles. Li Xiaozong could tell how desperately thirsty her elder brother was, yet he would not drink much. She sighed quietly. Even drinking water had become a luxury. If she had known times would turn out like this, she would have been more careful with water back in her old life. Mother, I'm going to the mountain to queue for water, Lu Daju called out. Old Lady Lu kept working on her shoe sole. She glanced secretly at Li Xiaozong's straw sandals, which were held together by only a few frayed straw ropes and about to fall apart. The rumor of fleeing the famine was probably true. She had to finish a soft cloth pair of shoes for her granddaughter before they had to leave. No one had ever cared for this little girl, who had lost her mother so young. Her poor daughter. Old Lady Lu no longer grieved as fiercely as when her daughter had first passed away. But seeing her granddaughter brought all her sorrow flooding back. She could still picture her little girl looking up and calling her mother, and the day her daughter got married, as if it had happened yesterday. She turned away so no one would see her sorrow. Dusk fell. Lu Daju came back carrying half a bucket of water. He heaved a deep sigh as soon as he stepped through the door. Getting water on the mountain is getting harder. I don't know if there will be any water tomorrow. The whole family fell silent. Everyone understood what running out of water meant. Right now they could still get a little water. If the spring on the cliff dried up completely, not just their family, but the whole village would have no water to drink. What would they do then? Old Man Lu took a puff of dry tobacco. We will worry about tomorrow when tomorrow comes. Fretting ourselves to death now solves nothing. Second son, you go collect water in the middle of the night. He figured that no one else would go for water at night, so their family could gather more. Lu Erxuan pouted and grumbled unhappily. Father, why go fetch water in the middle of the night instead of sleeping? We can go at dawn. There is no farm work to do anyway. The crops were already dying, yet his father still fussed over them as if they were precious. He could not understand his parents' thinking. Old man Lu's expression darkened. What? Can't you obey my orders? Lu Erxuan looked resentful, but said no more. For supper that night, they had thin porridge with barely any rice grains. Each person got a small piece of rendered pork fat. When food was scarce, that little bit of grease in one's stomach helped take the edge off hunger. Night fell completely. Lu Erxuan picked up his wooden bucket and headed out, unwilling. Li Xiaoxing's stomach rumbled with hunger. Her elder brother was tall and in his prime, so he must be even hungrier than she was. She beckoned to Li Daniu, who was sitting on the threshold enjoying the cool night air. Brother, Li Daniu turned around. Seeing his little sister calling him, he stood up and walked inside. Songer, do you need to go to the outhouse? She had no need for the outhouse. She had only drunk 2 small bowls of thin porridge all day. All moisture had evaporated through sweat, and there was no chance of bowel movements. Old Lady Lu and Old Man Lu were enjoying the cool air in the yard. Li Xiaozong lowered her voice. Brother, carry me outside for a walk. I want to look at the scenery of Lu Village. She hoped to find a secluded spot so she could eat a big steamed bun from her space. It was not that she was selfish and unwilling to share with her grandparents. She simply had no way to explain where the food came from. She could confide in Li Daniu, her own brother who would protect her. If she told anyone else such a story, she feared they would tie her up and demand non-stop gifts from the supposed immortal being. Li Daniu could not see what special scenery there was. Lu Village was just like their own village. Still, he turned his back for her to climb on. Li Xiaozong lay on his back, and a strong smell of sweat drifted up to her nose. Brother, what is that smell on you? She held her nose in distaste. Li Daniu sniffed himself, but smelled nothing. Maybe it's the meat fat we ate earlier. It was not meat. It was body odor. Li Xiaozong lifted her arm and smelled herself and nearly gagged. In a year where water was so scarce, no one could bathe. Old Lady Lu fanned herself with her palm. When she saw Li Daniu carrying Li Xiaozong out, she stood up. Daniu is a grown young man. It is not proper for him to help you with outhouse business. Let Grandma go with you. Li Xiaozong felt grateful but declined. Grandma, brother and I are just going for a walk to get familiar with Lu Village. Sure, get familiar with the place, Lu Guilan, sitting on the threshold of the side room, rolled her eyes. Acting as if you belong here. She thought Li Xiaozong had no intention of leaving and was scouting out the place. She shot Li Xiaozong a sharp glare. Old Lady Lu's face turned stern. They are not outsiders. They are my grandson and granddaughter. All that rendered fat we gave you was wasted on you. Lu Guilan's mouth watered as she thought of the fat. It had only been a small piece, and everyone had gotten some, so she was not thankful. Mother, that is not fair. Zhang Shi stood up with her arms folded. A grandson from a daughter's side is not a true grandson. How can they count as part of this family? Did that mean people from the Li family could come claim the Lu family's property? Li Daniu's face burned red, though the darkness hid it. He could plainly hear the rejection in their words. Li Xiaozong felt him stiffen beneath her, and she understood his feelings. She felt uncomfortable too. Yet she could not blame her second maternal aunt-in-law's family. From their point of view, no one would happily accept 2 extra people living in their home. She had no wish to force them to take her in. She had not figured out what she and her brother would do if everyone fled the famine and the villages emptied out. Grandma, Grandpa, we have come to see you and we are glad you are well. We will head back today and visit again when we can. She could never go back to the Li family. When they had cut ties, it had been made clear that they would never return, even if they had to beg for food. She would take things one step at a time. Old Lady Lu grabbed Li Daniu's arm, terrified they would really leave. Where would you go? This is your home. As long as I draw breath, no one will drive you away. If anyone objects, your grandfather and I will leave with you. Mother, you speak the truth. Xiaozong and Daniu are part of our family. No one will object. Lu Daju, the eldest son, spoke up first. Lu Sanshun nodded in agreement. Eldest brother is right. Lu Erxuan exchanged a glance with his wife Zhang Shi, raised his eyebrows, and said nothing. Lu Guilan snorted, stamped her foot, and stormed into her room. Lu Guixiang hesitated for a moment and followed her elder sister inside. She sat beside the king and watched Lu Guilan's hunched back. Sister, you should not have spoken like that. Lu Guilan sat up abruptly. How should I have spoken? Should I be as oblivious to outsiders as grandmother? Lu Guixiang pressed her lips together. If it were not for Sister Xiaozong, we would not have gotten meat to eat. She is a good person. Lu Guilan grew angrier. Her own sister was taking the side of a stranger against her. She felt isolated. If you like her so much, go be her little sister. Why stay here with me? Get out. I do not want to see you. Lu Guixiang had only wanted to smooth things over and did not move. Lu Guilan pushed her out of the room and slammed the wooden door shut. 12-year-old Lu Guixiang stood outside, humiliated in front of the whole family. Tears streamed down her cheeks. Zhang Shi glared at her crossly. You brought this on yourself. Can't you tell who is on your side? Stop crying. She was glad she had more than one daughter. Otherwise, this girl would drive her crazy. Rejected by her sister and scolded by her own mother, Lu Guixiang squatted on the ground, wrapped her arms around her knees, and sobbed quietly. Old Lady Lu could not bear to see it. She walked over and patted her granddaughter's back, then looked at her daughter-in-law. Say no more. The girl is growing up. Do you not fear she will grow distant from you? Zhang Shi huffed. She is already not on my side. If I had known she would turn out like this, I would never have had her. Old Lady Lu could not interfere with how her daughter-in-law raised her children, so she could only comfort Lu Guixiang. Old Man Lu kept an eye on Li Xiaozong and Li Danio, afraid they would slip out the door and leave for good. Li Xiaozong's plan had failed. She could not eat her steamed buns and pickled mustard greens, and had to go hungry and wait for tomorrow's thin porridge. That night, Old Lady Lu had considered putting Li Xiaozong in the room with Lu Guilan and her sister. But knowing Lu Guilan's temper, she changed her mind. For people slept on the narrow kong. Old Lady Lu and her husband lay in the middle, with Li Xiaozong beside her grandmother. Old Lady Lu reminded her, if you need to get up at night, tell me, and I will bring the chamber pot. Soon steady breathing filled the room. Li Xiaozong was too hungry to sleep. Then she suddenly remembered, she had a farm space. She whispered, Grandma. There was no reply. Relieved, she focused her mind and entered her farm space. The sky here was bright blue, and the land was upgraded rich black soil. Corn and potatoes grew in the fields. There were 24 plots of upgraded black soil in total, 4 across and 6 down. When she had entered the space the day before, the corn had been 1 foot tall. Now it was another foot taller. It grew just as fast as it had in the game. In a few days, it would be ready to harvest. Li Xiaozong's heart raced. Once the corn and potatoes ripened, she could sell them in the mall for gold coins. Those coins could buy seeds, fertilizer, food, drink, and daily supplies. She no longer needed to hoard resources. Besides steamed buns and pickled mustard greens, could she buy bread and ham? Thinking of her favorite old-fashioned cream bread roll, one appeared in her hand. She peeled off the plastic wrapper and took a bite. Sweet cream filled her mouth. After something sweet, she craved something savory, so she bought a chicken sausage. This is what a decent life feels like, she sighed to herself. Her hands felt sticky after eating. She wanted to wash them, but she knew water was precious in the outside world. The farm was quiet, with no noise at all, yet she heard the gurgle of running water. She had never noticed a stream here before. She always bought irrigation water from the mall. She looked toward the glimmering water in the distance. There really is water. Where did the stream come from? She muttered to herself. She guessed that as the game had become real, the farm had changed and become more like an actual estate. She hopped over on one good leg, bent her uninjured right leg, and squatted down. The stream was less than a foot deep. The water was as clear as mineral water, and smooth pebbles lay on the riverbed. The water was lukewarm, at room temperature. Could I take a bath here? The thought excited her. She quickly undid the fastenings of her clothes, took off her cropped trousers, and carefully moved into the stream. The water felt cool at first, but she soon grew used to it. The water alone would not clean her hair and skin well. She spent coins to buy a small bottle of shampoo and a bar of soap. Body wash was too expensive, so she skipped it. Toothbrushes, toothpaste, and towels all cost gold coins too. Her hair was matted. She needed 3 applications of shampoo to work up lather. She used her fingers as a comb and braided her hair. After bathing, she washed her clothes as well. She could not bear to put on dirty garments. Something felt odd. She crouched by the stream and looked at her reflection. Her face was gaunt, with only her eyes prominent. But that was not what felt strange. She glanced down at her right leg. It was supporting her weight just as well as her left leg, with no pain at all. She swallowed hard, barely containing her excitement. This water, can it heal injuries? She set her clothes aside and stood up, jumping lightly. Her leg worked perfectly. Her injury was gone. She could barely hold back her laughter. Then she realized she had no clothes on and quickly crouched down. Her old cropped trousers were too short because she had grown taller, and she had no new clothes. Several layers of patches on her bottoms were about to tear. The old fabric was worn thin. She worried her clothes would fall apart during the famine journey. To avoid embarrassment, she opened them all, spent 5 gold coins on cotton underwear and 10 gold coins on a cotton camisole. She was extremely thin, and her bones stuck out sharply. Even the smallest sizes were loose on her. Since she could not return them, she made do. Having something was better than nothing. She pulled her damp old clothes back on. There was no wind in the farm space. The sun shone brightly but gave off little heat. The temperature stayed constant. When she slipped her feet into her straw sandals, she noticed the thick calluses on her soles were gone. The straw pricked her feet. Oh no. My feet have grown soft after soaking in the water, and I have no cloth shoes to wear. She left the space, her clothes still damp. The bedroom door had been left open for coolness at night. She sat quietly on the threshold to let her clothes air dry. Just as she sat down, she saw a dark figure duck into the kitchen. It was too dark to make out who it was, and the figure did not spot her. She breathed a quiet sigh of relief. She had no idea what explanation she would give if she had been seen. When Old Lady Lu woke up, she reached over and found the space beside her empty. Panic surged through her. Had the 2 children run away? As dawn broke, she could see clearly that Li Xiaozong was indeed gone. Li Dania lay sound asleep beside Old Man Lu, mouth open. Had Li Xiaozong left alone? That could not be. Her leg was injured, and she would never abandon her brother. Old Lady Lu relaxed, assuming she had gone to the outhouse. Old Man Lu woke up annoyed. What is all the commotion about? Old Mrs. Lu was afraid of waking Li Daniu and whispered what had just happened. Old Man Lu lay in bed, glanced toward the door, and jerked his chin. Isn't that Xiaozong? Why is she asleep sitting up? Spotting Li Xiaozong, old Mrs. Lu's anxious heart settled, though she also felt amused. What was the girl doing sleeping right on the threshold? Old Mrs. Lu turned, slipped her feet into her shoes, got down off the kang, and walked over to Li Xiaozong. A pleasant fragrance drifted toward her. It was an indescribably nice scent. She reached out to wake her granddaughter, by marriage, and noticed her matted hair. Up close, the fragrance grew even stronger. Old Mrs. Lu leaned in and sniffed the top of her head. Good heavens, how did our Zonger get to smell so wonderful? Li Xiaozong opened her eyes slightly and realized she had fallen asleep. She rubbed her eyes. Grandma. Old Mrs. Lu stroked her dry yet smooth hair. Zonger, where were you last night? Your hair is clean and you smell lovely. Li Xiaozong had been turning this problem over in her mind ever since she bathed the night before. Still, she could not bear to stop bathing just to avoid suspicion. She came up with a clumsy excuse, one that would only work because her grandma doted on her. Grandma, I had a dream last night. Already curious about why her granddaughter, by marriage, had suddenly become clean, old Mrs. Lu grew even more interested. In her view, dreams often foretold things. Hoping to interpret the dream, she sat down beside Li Xiaozong. Tell Grandma, what did you dream about? Li Xiaozong repeated the story she had prepared beforehand. Grandma, I dreamed of Mother. Her hands were soft. She stroked my head and said I had suffered. She said she would wash my hair. When I woke up, Mother was gone, so I ran outside looking for her. Old Mrs. Lu turned her head away. Her shoulders shook. She fought hard not to sob aloud, yet tears streamed down her face. She believed her late daughter could not bear to leave her child and had appeared in a dream to wash the girl's hair. She wondered why her own daughter had never visited her in dreams. Did she not know how much her mother missed her? Ever since her daughter's death, she had longed to see her in her sleep, yet every vision of her was blurred. The harder she tried to draw near, the farther her daughter drifted away. She even felt a flicker of envy for her granddaughter, by marriage. Wiping her tears and sniffling, she turned back. Zonger, did your mother say anything else? Li Xiaozong could see the longing in her grandma's eyes. Grandma, Mother told me to tell you she is doing well over there. She even holds a minor official post. She said you should not grieve for her and must take good care of yourself. Old Mrs. Lu could hold back no longer. She covered her wrinkled face and wept quietly. Moved by her grandma's grief, Li Xiaozong's own tears fell. Through blurred eyes, she gently patted her grandma's back, her voice choked. Grandma, in the dream Mother also gave me 2 eggs. She said they were for you and Grandpa to nourish your bodies. She told me no one but you two must ever know about this. As her words ended, 2 eggs appeared in Li Xiaozong's other hand. Old Mrs. Lu had thought the dream words were nothing more than fantasy. When Li Xiaozong held the eggs right before her eyes, she was too stunned to cry. Her trembling hands took them. The eggs felt warm, as if still carrying her daughter's warmth. She hurried back inside the house, holding 1 egg in each hand and thrusting them before Old Man Lu. Tears still rolled down her cheeks even as the corners of her mouth lifted. Husband, look. Quick, look. Old Man Lu had long been awake, though he had not gotten up. It was not laziness. After a lifetime of farm labor, lying in bed was harder work than toiling in the fields. Moving around made him hungry. Staying still helped conserve food. At sight of the eggs in his wife's hands, he shot upright. We sold all our hens long ago for grain. Where did these eggs come from? Weeping softly, old Mrs. Lu repeatedly Xiaozong's story, keeping her voice low for fear of being overheard. Tears glistened on Old Man Lu's weather-beaten face. He blinked hard to force them back. His daughter had not forgotten her children or the old couple and had manifested herself to them. This must never be told to outsiders. Not even our eldest, second, or third sons. If they know, their wives will learn of it too. Our daughter surely had her reasons for keeping this secret. Old Mrs. Lu nodded repeatedly. What worried her most was that word getting out might harm her daughter's spiritual merit. Remembering her daughter now served as a minor official in the afterlife, she laughed through her tears. Li Dainio had woken and overheard his grandparents' hushed conversation. He was confused. Earlier his little sister had spoken of an immortal, yet now it was their mother. He guessed the truth. His sister must have been afraid of trouble and used their mother as a cover. Since that was the story she told, he would play along and pretend he knew nothing. Old Mrs. Lu could not bear to eat the 2 eggs. She had wanted to give them to Li Xiaozong and Li Dainio. But if she lit a fire to cook them, everyone in the household would find out. She hid the eggs inside the cabinet instead. If food ran out one day, the eggs might save lives. Lu Ershuan came back carrying half a bucket of water and yawned as he stepped into the courtyard. You all said no one fetched water at night, but the line stretched all the way to the foot of the mountain. I stayed up the whole night. Old Man Lu walked out with his hands behind his back. If others can stand in line, so can you. You have nothing urgent to do during the day. Go sleep if you are tired. Lu Ershuan sensed something off about his father's unusually lenient tone. Have you hidden food? Are you trying to send me off to sleep so you can eat it yourselves? Old Man Lu slapped the back of his head. Nonsense. Get back to your room and sleep. Aren't you exhausted? Rubbing the back of his head with a grimace, Lu Ershuan complained. Father, stop hitting me. I am all grown up. Grown up or not, you are still my son. Old Man Lu glanced at the half-filled bucket and sighed. He wondered how much longer their supplies would hold out. Lu Ershuan went back to bed. Zhang Shi leaned close to him. See? Your father favors your elder and younger brothers. As the second son, you never get any respect. Annoyed, Lu Ershuan turned his face toward the wall. Leave me alone. Can I not get any rest? Zhang Shi curled her lip and huffed. You only dare snap at me. If you had any backbone, you would talk back to your father. Then I would think better of you. Lu Ershuan said nothing. Zhang Shi straightened her clothes. I am going back to my natal family. I may not return today. Lu Ershuan paid her no mind. Expecting no reply, Zhang Shi glared at his back, held her stomach, and walked out. Yashir had just finished preparing breakfast and saw Zhang Shi leaving. Second sister-in-law, where are you going? Frowning, Zhang Shi snapped back. Must I report every move to you? What are you suspecting? Yang Shi was taken aback. What had she suspected? While cooking that morning, she had noticed their large sack of brown rice had shrunk noticeably. She had told herself she must have misremembered. Now, her innocent question had drawn such an angry retort, and she began to suspect Zhang Shi felt guilty. I only asked whether you wanted to eat. The meal is ready. Her eyes studied Zhang Shi, trying to read something from her demeanor. Zhang Shi kept her back turned. I have urgent business at my parents' home. This way I save the family one more mouth to feed. With that, she hurried through the wicker gate. Yangshi stared at her retreating figure, forcing herself not to think ill of a member of their own household. Fosher followed her gaze and saw only the dirt road leading toward the village entrance. Elder sister-in-law, what are you looking at? Yangshi looked away and shook her head. Nothing. Let us eat. At the table, Lu Daju glanced up. Mother, why are your eyes swollen? He worried she had not slept well. Old Mrs. Lu quickly lowered her head. I stayed up late talking last night. It is nothing serious. Eat your food. Old man Lu nodded in agreement, sipping thin rice soup from the edge of his bowl. Once outside the village, Zhangshi pulled out her cloth sack. Her natal home was in the neighboring village, a little more than an hour's walk away. She stepped joyfully into the courtyard. Mother, I am home. Inside the house, old Mrs. Zhang paused mid-spoonful of porridge and hastily divided the remaining thin gruel among her son's bowls. Hurry and eat. Our younger sister is here. Zhangshi's brothers drained their bowls in one gulp and wiped their mouths just as Zhangshi walked in. Smiling, Zhangshi glanced at the table. I arrived just in time. I have not eaten yet. Old Mrs. Zhang gave a cry of feigned regret. If you had stepped through the door a moment earlier, I could have scraped together a bite for you. Disappointed, Zhangshi blamed her own slow pace. She had hoped to arrive for a meal. I know food is scarce for so many of you. She set the cloth sack down on the wooden table. At sight of the grain, her sisters-in-law broke into smiles that had been absent a moment before. You should not have brought anything. Do not be foolish. She is an aunt. Can she visit her birth family empty-handed? What would her nieces and nephews think? Chided her eldest brother. Zhangshi thought his words awkward yet reasonable. Brother speaks true. We share the same blood. Not like the Lu family, who always favor outsiders. They care for those Li children. Food is already scarce, and now 2 more mouths have joined the household. She told them how Li Xiaozong and Li Dania had severed ties with the Li family and moved in with the Lius. Old Mrs. Zhang curled her lip in scorn. So they intend to leech off the Lu household. Your mother-in-law is foolish to take in outsiders. A married daughter belongs to her husband's family. What business of the Lius are those 2 children? Zhangshi nodded whole-heartedly, convinced her mother saw things clearly. Exactly. Grandma insisted on keeping them. What say did I have as a daughter-in-law? She always felt like an outsider in the Lu home. Only returning to her birth family felt like coming home. Back in the Lu village, old Mrs. Lu was reassured the 2 children would not run away again. She told Li Danio to carry Li Xiaozong outside for some fresh air. When they reached the foot of the hills where no one was around, Li Xiaozong tapped her brother's shoulder. Brother, set me down. Li Danio lowered her gently and supported her by the arms. Lift that injured leg. Do not put any weight on it. Instead of lifting her leg, Li Xiaozong summoned 5 white flour steamed buns. Her black soil farm corn was nearly ready for harvest. Once harvested, she could sell it for gold coins and stop living hand to mouth. Brother, eat these. Li Dania swallowed hard, but shook his head. You should give these back to the immortal. Do not ask for so much. What if the immortal grows angry? Li Xiaozong pressed the buns into his hands. The immortal said taking buns is not greed. He will not be upset. The 5 buns looked tiny in Li Dania's large hands. He glanced back and forth between the food and his little sister. Can Grandma and Grandpa have some? Li Xiaozong shook her head helplessly. She truly cared for her grandparents. She supplied 2 eggs daily to nourish them without drawing attention. But steamed buns were far too conspicuous. Too many people might notice. Li Dania understood her reasoning. Then you eat too. Li Xiaozong refused. I already ate. These are all for you. She had eaten ham sausages and bread and had little appetite for steamed buns. Watching her brother eat greedily, she bought a packet of pickled mustard greens costing 1 gold coin. Li Dania finished all 5 buns in several large mouthfuls, hiccuping from being stuffed. Li Xiaozong handed him bottled mineral water. He hesitated, drank half the bottle, and saved the rest for her. Thanks to her shop, Li Xiaozong had grown and used to drinking after someone else. Yet water was extremely precious in these hard times. Li Dania read no distaste on her face and assumed she was simply being frugal. He felt deeply moved that she would deny herself for his sake. He could not imagine having a better sister in the world. Afraid the salty pickles would make him excessively thirsty, Li Xiaozong stored the leftover half packet inside her farm space. Brother, I dreamed of the immortal again last night. He brushed his hand over my leg, and it healed. Li Dania quickly knelt and rolled up her trouser leg. The once swollen, wounded right leg looked perfectly normal. Good heavens, that immortal is truly miraculous. The doctor said it would take 100 days to heal, yet he cured it in an instant. He thought how wonderful it would have been if the immortal had appeared sooner. Then their mother would still be alive, and they would not be motherless. Somer, no one else must know your leg has healed. Only you and I can keep this secret. You still need to pretend to be lame. Li Xiaosong agreed. On their way back with Li Dania carrying her, they met Zhangshi returning from her natal home. Li Dania paused. Second aunt-in-law. Li Xiaosong said nothing. Zhangshi disliked her, and the feeling was mutual. Silence seemed best to avoid conflict. Zhangshi, however, was ready for a quarrel. If it were not for you two, I would not suffer such humiliation. She had thought bringing grain to her natal family would make her a valued guest. She had even told Lu Ershuan she would not come home for the night. Instead, her mother had chased her away. Her mother had claimed a married daughter ought not stay over. When Zhangshi had gone back to fetch her forgotten sack, she had overheard her mother and sister-in-law gossiping. She realized her mother feared Zhangshi would eat the grain she had brought. Hurt and furious, she had made her way home in tears. Li Xiaosong thought her outburst unreasonable. Second aunt-in-law, why vent your frustrations on us? Grandma asked us to stay. We are not here to endure your bad temper. Zhangshi could not tell them the real reason for her distress. In her mind, the 2 extra mouths in the household meant Grain would be better off with her own birth family. All the trouble stemmed from the children. I am a daughter-in-law of the Lu family. This is my home. May I not speak my mind? Li Xiaosong recalled the shadow she had seen the previous night slipping into the kitchen and leaving carrying a cloth sack. Zhangshi's figure bore a striking resemblance to that mysterious person. She decided to test her. Second aunt-in-law, have you done something you ought not to? I saw what happened last night. Zhangshi's arrogant, disdainful expression froze. Her eyes widened in shock. What did you see? She had acted cautiously under cover of darkness, without checking her surroundings, never expecting to be spotted by this girl. She bitterly regretted her carelessness. Reading her reaction, Li Xiaosong knew Zhangshi had indeed misbehaved. I saw you sneak into the kitchen alone, did I not? Zhangshi's face turned deathly pale. Her secret was out. Why had the girl been awake and hiding somewhere? If her mother-in-law learned she had stolen grain for her natal family, she might be cast out of the household. She feared Li Xiaosong would expose her without mercy. Li Xiaosong observed her panic. She had no wish to report her to Grandma. Making accusations would bring strife to the whole household and give the elderly couple unnecessary worry. If she kept quiet, Zhangshi would hold a secret over her own head and perhaps stop persecuting the siblings. Surely you only went into the kitchen to get a drink of water last night, second aunt-in-law? Confused by the sudden shift in tone, Zhangshi stammered. Why yes, that is right. Li Xiaosong gave a faint smile. May we go home now? Anger welled inside Zhangshi. She had held the upper moment only moments before, yet now she was being blackmailed. Reluctantly, she stepped aside to let them pass. Once they were far enough away, Li Dania glanced back. Zhangshi stood motionless, her spirit broken. Songer, what exactly did you see last night? Li Xiaosong feared her brother might accidentally spill everything. It would harm their standing in the Lu household if word spread from them. Brother, I saw nothing at all. I was only bluffing. She is the one with a guilty conscience. Li Dania believed her and laughed heartily. Songer, you are so clever, far smarter than me. He meant every word. In the past his quiet little sister had never struck him as sharp-witted. No wonder villagers said promising children speak late, that described her perfectly. From afar, they spotted old Mrs. Lu waiting anxiously by the courtyard gate. Relieved to see them return, she broke into a smile. Where have you two been? Why so long? Resting on her brother's back, Li Xiaosong gestured vaguely. Over that way, Grandma. Li Dania dared not lift his eyes, feeling guilty. He and his sister had enjoyed good food behind the elders' backs while Grandma worried over them. Right after they spoke, Zhangshi hurried up behind them. She studied her mother-in-law and the 2 children, relieved to detect no sign that her secret was known. Second daughter-in-law, I thought you would stay the night at your parents' home. Why have you come back? Old Mrs. Lu asked casually. Zhangshi flared up at once. Mother, am I not a member of this household? Am I forbidden to return home? Old Mrs. Lu stared in bewilderment. She had never barred her daughter-in-law from coming and going. Unlike many village mothers-in-law, she had never treated Zhangshi harshly even when her first 2 children were girls. She had consoled her then. Only with her 3rd child had Zhangshi borne a son. There was no reason for such hostility now. Realizing how rude her tone had sounded, Zhangshi inwardly blamed old Mrs. Lu for asking questions at such a bad moment instead of apologizing. She shot Li Xiaosong a sharp glare and stormed into her room. Pointing toward the doorway Zhangshi had vanished through, old Mrs. Lu trembled with anger. Is she the mother-in-law here, or am I? Li Xiaosong did not know what to say. Her grandma was far too soft-hearted. Once inside, Li Xiaosong was set down on the kang. Old Mrs. Lu sat heavily on the edge of the bed, hurt and frustrated. She stared toward the paper-covered window even though she could not see outside. Anyone could tell how wounded she felt. She had asked a simple, kind question and been publicly disrespected. Her gentle nature left her only to suffer inwardly, tears threatening to spill. Feeling sorry for her, Li Xiaosong spoke up cautiously. Grandma, other mothers-in-law command respect. When they speak, their daughters-in-law dare not contradict them. I think you ought to stand firmer too. Old Mrs. Lu's mood lightened a little by her granddaughter by marriage's plain-spoken words. She sighed. I always thought tolerance would keep peace. If we get along, nothing else matters. These were famine days. Everyone was irritable from hunger, and she had wanted to avoid enforcing strict rules. Li Xiaosong shook her head. That will not work. Every time you yield, people test your boundaries. Next time she will push even further. Her grandma had almost no boundaries at all. Mutual respect made for good family relations. One-sided kindness only invited being taken advantage of. Especially with someone like Zhangshi who did not value her marital home. If grandma kept yielding, Li Xiaosong worried, what would the other two daughters-in-law think watching Zhangshi steal household grain unpunished? Why should they exercise restraint if one person helped herself without consequence? Food belonged to the whole family. Old Mrs. Lu was surprised such mature thoughts came from the child she still thought of as little. Art Zonger has truly grown up. Your mother would rest easy knowing that. Afraid this would make Grandma grieve for her daughter again, Li Xiaosong quickly changed the subject. Grandma, be more assertive. This whole household looks to you for leadership. If you do not hold firm, the family will fall apart. She offered advice. If you do not know how, go learn from the other elder women in the village. You will pick it up in 2 days. Old Mrs. Lu laughed aloud, wrinkles crinkling across her face. Silly child. I was once a daughter-in-law myself. Do you truly believe I do not know how to be firm? I endured a harsh mother-in-law in my youth, and that is why I choose to be lenient toward my daughters-in-law.